Chapter 1. Fate. Karma. Doom. 2. The entity known as Destiny was known by many names, some flattering and some not, but regardless of what she was called there were certain truths about her existence. First, she controlled the fate of humans and allowed those known as seers to view parts of her plan. Next, there was always a plan. Third, prophecies could, and would, be as vague as possible. 2. Finally, meddling old bastards would always be trying to figure things out before they were to happen, and then try to change the result. The purpose of prophecy wasn't to know the future but to be aware of all the paths that life might take. Instead, the man known as Dumbledore had proclaimed that one of two children would undoubtedly be the ones to bring down the Dark Lord through the power of love, which promptly caused said Dark Lord to try and interfere and kill the child, or make his own selection before it was time. That meant that this had to be changed, because Destiny was, if nothing else, a bit of an asshole to those who sought to cheat, or think too highly of themselves. Looking at the scene before her, as time slowed to a crawl, the goddess began to ponder the meaning of the words she had given to the woman named Trelawney. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. How best to screw with humanity? Luckily the wording was vague and up for interpretation. Even luckier was the fact that Destiny herself was the one doing the interpretations. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. That was the most interesting line of all. Because how does one define equal? Slowly the pale green energy continued on its path across the room, preparing to take the infant's life. Obviously the two were not equal in any way, shape, or form. But then again, the prophecy didn't say when they would be equal, just that the Dark Lord would mark the boy. As the spell reached the baby, and created a small scar on his forehead, reality came to a halt. Destiny strode casually through the room, stepping over the body of the boy's mother which lay on the ground nearby. 1. The boy was marked, yet the Dark Lord remained. Even if he was about to be destroyed, at this moment they were not equal. Voldemort was more powerful magically and had more experience using that magic. He was physically larger and stronger. He was more intelligent, he had an army that would answer his every call, he had political power, fame, fortune, wealth, knowledge, charisma, and even magical artifacts that could be used. He also had the element of surprise, as well as the whole immortality thing going for him. What did the child have? 2 dead parents, that was about it. Sure, others could, and probably would, come to his aid, but they weren't his followers. They would not blindly charge into battle by his orders, or torture and kill for him. He had no access to his family's wealth or artifacts, at least not until he had reached adulthood. He had no knowledge of magic, or anything else for that matter, and was rather average in terms of power. Yes, they truly were the definition of unequal. So how to change that? Destiny grinned. It was always so much fun to screw with the preconceived notions that those all-knowing assholes always had. To take what they knew was true, and then flip it completely upside down. Normally, Destiny was limited with her interactions in the world, but not when it came to the future and fulfilling prophecies. In these cases her ability to alter reality skyrocketed. The boy couldn't be given knowledge, such a thing would change him into someone else and thus could not be allowed. His free will was also off the table, for not even the divine could take away mankind's ultimate gift. Immortality was not a gift either, for death too was gifted to the race of man by the Creator. So what did that leave? Power. A snap of the fingers and Harry Potter's magic was raised to the level of Voldemort at his peak, aka this very instance. Of course this meant that the boy would grow in power proportional to the fact that this was his weakest, but that wasn't Destiny's concern. 8. Intelligence. He couldn't be given knowledge, but the potential could be granted. An eidetic memory, the potential for above genius level intellect, a future inclination towards tactics, book smarts, street smarts, magical knowledge, biology, chemistry, and whatever the hell else humanity placed value on. Charisma. Humans could not be made into followers, because that would interfere with free will, but he could eventually be charismatic enough that people would simply flock to him, be manipulated by him, and deceived by him. Increase that with an aura that would draw others to him, whether in servitude or lust it didn't really matter. Talent. The boy would need a natural gift in the magical arts to compete with someone who had a 60-year head start on him. Perhaps a natural gift never yet seen in the magical world would balance things out a bit. Still it wasn't enough. The scales weren't quite balanced out, even with all of these gifts, so what else? Power the Dark Lord knows not. Well, that had been vague enough to be of use. Never said it had to be something that anyone knew, right? A few new magical abilities never conceived of, and the boy would be in a considerably better situation to defend himself. 2. But still, he needed something more. A guide to take him on this journey, a companion that would forever be by his side to support him no matter what happened. The problem remained with that pesky free will nonsense. A slight glance out of a nearby window had the entity grinning. A beautiful snow-white owl sat on a nearby tree. 1. Perfect. As for the rest of the imbalances, those could be rectified by increasing the boy's magic and natural talent with it, right? Close enough. Stepping back, Destiny once more allowed time to flow, and watched as the killing curse reflected back onto its caster by an act of self-sacrifice. She grinned. Hopefully next time humans would learn to let fate continue naturally, rather than try and screw with it. 5. Comment. 11. Comment. Vote. Chapter 2. I don't know about this, Albus. I have a bad feeling about leaving the boy here. It will be fine, Minerva. This is the only way to ensure he grows up without the corruptions of fame and fortune. 1. But will he be safe? Will he be cared for? I am sure he will. Lily Evans was one of the kindest individuals I have ever met in my lifetime. I cannot imagine anyone sharing her blood and upbringing could be anything less than a remarkable person as well. There will be wards placed around his home to protect him. He will be safe, Minerva. 4. The woman let out a reluctant sigh. Albus was right. Had to be right. The boy would be loved here, and for the right reasons rather than just for the wealth of the family he came from or the mark on his forehead. All right, Albus, let's just get this over with. The old man nodded, before placing the child on the doorstep of 4 Privet Drive. A swift knock later and the man vanished, allowing those currently residing in the residence to take up the responsibility of raising the child. If he had known the consequences of his actions that night he would have never took the boy there. If he had only known. Over 9 years later. Oh, this ain't good. No, ain't good at all. Hagrid muttered nervously as he departed from the doorstep of 4 Privet Drive. Harry wasn't there. He wasn't living where they dropped him off. In fact, according to the fat man, he hadn't lived there in over 9 years. The muggle claimed they had dropped the newborn off at an orphanage the next day, refusing to deal with someone else's problem, especially one that was left on their doorstep with only a note as explanation. 3. Hagrid could blend in enough to go to one small house where the occupants knew about magic. What he could not do was show up at a muggle orphanage. No, and good. Dumbledore is gonna have words with me though. The large man promptly used his temporary portkey to return to Hogwarts. He needed help. I'm sorry, Hagrid, but I simply don't have time. You know that I have other students to visit as well. I know, but I am a begging ya, Professor, please. The dark-skinned woman gave a sigh. She knew that she would cave eventually and help the man, but it was such a stressful time of the year. 4. I can help ya out. How do I take some of your duties? I can get your classroom ready and your supplies. Please, Professor Sinistra. Fine. If you could purchase the items on my list, I should have enough time to go see whoever this boy is. Hagrid nodded cheerfully, before taking the list and starting to depart. Hagrid. Yes'm. The boy. Oh, you're right, you are. Tracked him down to an orphanage. Got the address here somewhere. The man patted himself down for a second, before pulling out a crumpled piece of paper and handing it to the woman. 1. Sorry. It is quite all right, Hagrid. The man nodded and, once again, turned to leave. Hagrid. Yes'm. His name. Oh, you're right, it's Harry, Professor, Harry Potter. The woman practically fainted. All Saints Boys Orphanage. If ever there was a place in need of repair, it was this one. Even magical buildings, with their preference to older-looking architectures, looked in better shape than this. The grass was yellow and lifeless, the building itself was dull gray, the lower windows were barred, and the upper level were covered in dirt and grime, paint was chipping, pipes were rusted, and the sound of life was noticeably absent. It was a bleak and terrible place. How the savior of the wizarding world ended up in such a hellhole was beyond the woman. But that was a question for another time, and thus the woman straightened her back to look as professional as possible before making her way inside. Name. Sinistra blinked at the middle-aged woman sitting behind the glassed-off welcome desk. Aurora Sinistra, I am here to see a Mr. Harry Potter. The professor hadn't expected much of a reaction, maybe a bit of curiosity as to why she would be visiting an orphan, thus when the woman turned pale white it earned more than a little suspicion. 1. S sign below, W. We are not responsible for anything that might go missing or any II injuries you may sustain on property. The witch glanced up for a moment, at the now stuttering woman, before finishing her signature with a nod. I will be all right. Is there anything you can tell me about? No, no. The teacher blinked twice, before making her way in the designated direction. Such an odd human being, I wonder if all muggles are so strange these days. The professor muttered as she walked up a series of, practically rotting, steps. Let's see, last room on the left, there it is. A soft tapping on the door earned her a happy enter from inside. Upon entering, something felt odd to the woman. A sudden warmth that filled her senses and her body, an odd feeling of contentment and desire. With a mental shake of her head, Aurora refocused her attention to the room. There on the worn-out bed sat a young boy with messy black hair, torn-up clothing, and a book in his hand. Mr. Potter. The book was lowered, and the woman fought the urge to gasp at the brilliant green eyes that gazed back at her. Yes. It was the voice of an angel, delightfully charming and light, with an carefree tone that warmed the soul. Discreetly biting her tongue, the woman fought back the initial, and rather inappropriate, comments she had been about to make before clearing her throat. My name is Aurora Sinistra and I am a teacher at Hogwarts. Due to your age, I am here to inform you of your admission to our school. 1. The boy cocked his head to the side, and the older individual's heart fluttered. I don't remember applying to your school. Oh, well, that is because you were chosen at birth. Your parents. The woman caught sight of the infamous scar on his forehead, and began to stare at it as if lost in thought, therefore she missed the boy's eyes narrowing annoyance. A rather loud hoot from nearby made the woman jump, as she suddenly noticed the beautiful snow-white owl standing on the open windowsill. It was staring at her with amber eyes. Judging her. What a pretty owl you have. Thank you, her name is Hedwig. You mentioned my parents. Oh yes, of course. Your parents paid to ensure your admittance when you were born. What were they like? Did you know them? Are they still alive? This wasn't what the woman had planned for, but naturally should have. What orphan doesn't want to know about those who had abandoned them? They were very noble. I never knew them, unfortunately. They passed away close to a decade ago. Oh, so what kind of school is this? The woman's smile brightened. This was always her favorite part. Tell me, Harry, have you ever noticed anything unusual happen around you? Maybe something that you can't explain. Comment. 5. Comment. Vote. Chapter 3. Mission accomplished, the woman mused as she made her way down the worn-out stone path, and away from the orphanage. Harry had been so very eager once she had explained magic, and had even admitted to a few odd situations he had found himself in. Doors opening before he could reach them. Water changing colors. His sight improving by itself a few years prior. All of these were signs of a vast magical potential, and she had been the one to introduce him to their world. Maybe she would end up owing Hagrid after all, and maybe, if she kept in contact with the boy as his first magical friend, she could even begin a relationship with him later on in life. 10. If he was this handsome and at such a young age, he would undoubtedly be immensely so when he became an older student. In her pondering, and secret fantasies, she never noticed the owl had been watching her ever since her departure. 1. Harry hummed happily as he lay sprawled out over his mediocre bed with a few pamphlets given to him by the teacher. What an interesting woman she was. An indignant hoot sounded from the window as the owl flew across the room. An instant later, and in its place was a beautiful girl, appearing as though in her mid-teens, with porcelain skin, snow-white hair, and amber eyes. She was thin, with slender arms and legs, and clad only in a knee-length white dress. 7. I don't like her. The boy rolled his eyes in amusement. You don't like anyone? He corrected easily, as he read through them with a certain lack of interest. It was all basic information. Dress code, class overviews, necessary supplies, how to get to the train station, and other useless bits of information. I like you. The green-eyed boy looked up from the items into the amber eyes that stared back at him, before the girl looked away with a slight blush. I suppose so. What exactly is it that you disliked about my new friend? The emphasis wasn't lost, and Hedwig fought back against the anger forming in the pit of her stomach. The way she was looking at you, like you were a meal to her. It is inappropriate for someone of her position. I don't know, it didn't bother me much. You need someone closer to your own age, someone like M. She snapped her jaw shut before anything else could be said, but it was already too late. Correct me if I am wrong, but you were the one who chose not to sleep in the bed anymore. It isn't appropriate anymore. You are starting to go through that phase. I fail to see what the problem is. 2. His reply was met with a huff. Of course. You are a borderline teenage boy. I also recall that you were the one who would snuggle into me at night, he teased. The girl didn't quite have a comeback for that statement, and let the room fall into silence. Are you going to attend? He quirked his head slightly to the side at her whispered question. Of course, this is far too convenient not to. Besides, think of all the things I will be able to learn. You don't need them. You are far greater than anyone at that school as you are now. Perhaps, but it would be a bit odd if I suddenly showed up at this ministry and declared that I was in charge. 1. Hedwig nodded. She knew this day would come eventually, but she had always secretly hoped that he would turn them down. That it would remain against the world as it had been for the last decade. That he would simply be content with just her. There would be other girls at Hogwarts, girls that would sense his greatness and be drawn to him. Why wouldn't they? The bigger question was, would she interfere, or let nature run its course? You know that no matter what happens, no one will ever replace you. Negative thoughts were swept from the pale girl's mind with a single statement, and she smiled warmly back at her boy. Yes, he might take pleasure in other girls, but she would always be his. I know. You will come with me, yes. Of course, silly boy. You can't get rid of me that easily. You will need to stay in your owl form, if the others were to discover what you are. 1. What would you do? If they took me away, she muttered, tears forming in her eyes at the thought of being separated from him as she had once before. Just as she had been the one constant good thing in his life, he had been the constant in hers. 1. I would burn their nation to the ground until I found you. 10. A glance into his eyes revealed his complete seriousness in the statement, and her heart rate was sent spiraling out of control. Comment. 5. Comment. Vote. Chapter 4. On September 1st, a young boy clad in a black cloak entered platform 9 3/4. As he strode towards the large steam train, his presence began to garner attention. Who is that? How should I know? Looks small though, maybe a first year. No way, no first year walks like that. What's with his robes? I've never seen clothing that dark before. It is like a new color. 1. I wonder where he buys them from. Must be a pure blood, only. We can't afford such high quality fabrics and shades. I wonder if he knows he can't have the owl on the train like that. Where are the rest of his things? How should I know? He has the most beautiful eyes. And so on until the boy finally reached the train itself. As he did so, an older student called out to him. Excuse me, you can't have your owl out like that. Sure enough, the snow white owl was perched on the boy's shoulder, perfectly calm despite the other people and animals cluttering the platform. Hey, you there. Your owl has to be in a cage, it can't. The boy promptly ignored the older boy and stepped onto the train. 2 minutes. It had taken all of 2 minutes for Harry Potter to become thoroughly annoyed with the wizarding world. Who would have thought that they would be just a slightly different form of stupidity than the non-magical world? They, at least he, wielded near limitless potential, and yet they insisted on all wearing the same stupid outfits, carrying the same supplies, with the same animals, all locked in cages. Even worse were the scattered conversations he had already caught. 6. Apparently gossip was just as annoyingly important as it was at the orphanage. He was infinitely glad that he had remembered to hide his scar beneath his hair prior to arriving, or he would have probably left by now. Excuse me. The boy currently occupying Draco's reserved carriage glanced up, and his brilliant eyes stopped the blonde's heart for a second. Yes. Why you are. Shaking free of the slight fascination that gripped him, the Malfoy heir straightened his back and rose up to his maximum height, a trick his father had showed him before arriving that could be used as a sign of royalty and power. You are in our carriage. Draco finished, gesturing back to the other future Slytherins that stood behind him. 3. The boy just looked a bit confused. Ah, definitely not a pure blood then. I don't recall seeing your name on the door. I don't recall asking if you did. No. Leave. For a second, the faintest of seconds, Draco swore he saw something in that boy's eyes. A fire that spoke of power untold, of cruelty immeasurable that could, and would, be inflicted with the slightest of efforts. 1. But it was gone before the pure blood could figure out what it was. Well, I suppose. Great, now get out, you dirty half-blood, or is it wood blood? Pansy sneered from behind. 1. The boy just stared back, and even Crabbe and Goyle shuffled back a step or two in discomfort. Before anything could escalate further, a soft hoot from the window broke the silence, and for the first time Draco noticed a white owl sitting on the windowsill, gazing softly at the boy. Letting out a sigh, and raising his hands in defeat, the boy replied back, I can't say that I know what either of those terms mean, but if you are so insistent upon this carriage, then I shall find a different one to sit in. With that he departed. 10 minutes later Draco would realize that the boy hadn't taken any luggage with him. I know. I promised I wouldn't kill anyone the first day, the green-eyed boy scowled as he made his way further back onto the train. 2. A gentle hoot from his shoulder informed him that his companion was at least apologetic about restraining his retaliation, even if the intruders had certainly earned it. Another minute of walking and Harry had located another, nearly empty, cabin. Well, it did have a few occupants, but looking for a place to sit. The emerald-eyed boy shrugged. Well, come on in, we won't bite. Okay, maybe Ronikins will when he is hungry, but... The twins laughed, and the younger boy, who Harry could only assume was the target of their taunts, turned bright red in anger. As he took the offered seat, a rather loud pop went off, covering him, and his owl, in a cloud of colored ink and staining them both. Perhaps having him promise not to murder anyone was a mistake, Hedwig pondered, as she contemplated pecking out the eyes of the two older boys, who were falling over each other laughing at their prank. Harry merely blinked in confusion for a moment or two, before sighing and began wiping the color from his face. Unfortunately, this also allowed his scar to be revealed, and thus earned gaping from the youngest of the redheads. Why you're Harry Potter. Blimey mate, why didn't you say so? You didn't ask my name, the raven-haired boy pointed out, as he continued to clean off his face. You're famous. What was it like? What? You know, defeating the Dark Lord. What Dark Lord? The one who murdered your parents. A Dark Lord murdered my parents. Of course, now Ron was showing signs of anger and annoyance. Was the celebrity being daft on purpose? News to me, I never knew what happened to them. BB, but you're Harry Potter. I am well aware. You must be super rich and powerful. Certainly not rich, no idea about powerful. Okay, that was a half lie. Technically Harry knew he was powerful, but until he had a standard to judge by he wasn't quite sure how powerful. 1. Oh come on mate. I bet you were gonna rule at Hogwarts. We should be best buds, I can show you. At this point Harry stood and left the carriage, ignoring the confused looks of the three redheads. 4. Comment. 5. Comment. Vote. Chapter 5. Perhaps Hogwarts was the wrong decision the boy mused as he strolled towards the very back of the train. Thus far he had met a handful of his fellow students, and found them all annoying beyond belief. Could you do something about this? Please, a voice in his mind practically begged, earning a chuckle from the boy and a slight gesture which removed the painted colors from both himself and Hedwig. I told you that being nice wouldn't help anything. The glare that the owl gave him earned another soft chuckle. She truly was far too emotional at times, which just happened to be one of the things he enjoyed most about her. Excuse me, why you haven't seen a T-toad H have you? Turning slightly, the emerald-eyed boy's eyebrow raised at the meek boy standing before him. Can't say that I have. I heard that magic can do some amazing things though. Perhaps one of the older students could use a locating spell of some kind. The boy's eyes widened, before he gave a thankful nod and ran off. He needs some serious work if he is going to survive in this school. 2. All right, first year's in the boats, come in, hurry now. the giant proclaimed, and he urged the students into the, already cramped, boats. Harry found himself stuck with the shy boy from before, a bushy-haired girl, and another brunette. I can't wait to start learning. Have all of you done your pre-class reading? The other two in the boat nodded, although the boy's was hardly noticeable. Harry merely shrugged. No. But it is so very interesting. I can't wait to look through their library. Excuse me, why is your owl on your shoulder? All three sets of eyes were now turned towards the boy, who tried desperately not to roll his own. She doesn't like being in a cage. BB, but that is against the rules. I never read any of the rules, so how would I know that? 1. But you know now. I didn't buy a cage for her, she likes to be with me. B, but the rules. By this point Harry had tuned her out, glancing out over the waters at the castle looming before them. The ghosts were a neat trick, if a bit much for those not used to magic. The enchanted ceiling, not so much. Sure, it was pretty, but compared to what they could have done with it. Harry glanced around the main hall with little interest at the older students and floating candles. They were all neat tricks but seemed rather silly to him. Settle down please, settle down students, a bearded man proclaimed before gesturing towards a stool positioned at the front of the room. I would like to welcome everyone to another year at Hogwarts. For those of you starting this year, I can only wish you the best in your studies. Now we shall begin the time-honored tradition of sorting new students into the houses. Minerva, if you please. After a brief song, apparently sung by the hat itself, the woman lead the first student up to the stool, and placing the enchanted hat upon their heads. A few seconds later and it would proclaim one of the 4 houses, before said student would be lead off to a corresponding table. Once again Harry grew bored, and glanced around the hall at the professors. The older man gave him a nod, and raised a cup to him. Odd. A greasy-haired man glared back with an unusual amount of animosity. Not as odd. A turban-clad man stared. Very odd considering that he appeared to have 2 different magical auras around him. Harry Potter. Apparently it was his turn, and the boy took the offered seat before the hat was dropped onto his head. Monster. That was what the sorting hat saw upon being placed upon Harry Potter's head. The boy was a monster. The hat had sorted Tom Riddle mere decades earlier, and yet even then there had been hope for the child who would become Lord Voldemort. Even then the sorting hat believed he could be redeemed, could be changed with time and love. 1. Harry could not. It wasn't just how powerful he was, but by Merlin was the boy powerful. It wasn't just the manipulative tendencies or the intellect that he already possessed, either would be prized by Ravenclaw and Slytherin. No, it was his utter lack of empathy towards virtually all people. The boy would kill children without a second thought. 12. They had to be warned. Dumbledore had to be warned. If it hadn't been for a young girl centuries ago, then it would be a simple task. Back then the hat could speak about what it saw in the minds of those it sorted, that is until a young girl had been sent to Hufflepuff, while the rest of her family was in Gryffindor. The question had been raised, and the answer simple: her sexual orientation will not be accepted in Gryffindor, she will do best in Hufflepuff. The girl hadn't returned after the winter holidays, and it was later discovered that her father had killed her in a fit of rage. 12. After that the founders were split between removing that hat altogether from the process, and ignoring this as a one-time incident. Finally they came to the agreement that secrets had to be kept. That children had to feel safe in the school. Yet they also had to be sorted to where they would be thrive. Thus the sorting hat was modified so that it could not speak secrets, nor could the information be extracted. They still had to be warned, otherwise this boy could doom them all, but how? As the hat went through its options he remembered the current state of Hogwarts, and the answer came to it. If the boy's fate could not be directly revealed, then perhaps it could encourage others to look more closely at him, to find his faults, and perhaps even stop the rise of a Dark Lord before it began. It must be Slytherin. 2. Please notice Albus, please see what is wrong here. A half-blood boy with happiness in his eyes and not a hint of cunning. Please. Yet despite the silent begging the room was filled with applause, and the boy smiled and gently set the hat back onto the stool. As he did so his smile turned feral. Clever, the boy whispered out, and for the first time ever the sorting hat felt fear. 4. Comment. 7. Comment. Vote. Chapter 6. Welcome to Slytherin, children. For those of you who are new to our school, this will be your common room for the next 7 years. The male dorms are on the left side, the females to the right. My office is before the door to the common room and is marked as such. I expect you all to behave as per the rules listed on the wall behind me. Remember that you will be treated far more harshly than the other houses, and so we must provide a strong front. For that reason I do not want to hear of any arguments in public. With a nod to his prefects the students were thus divided and taken to their rooms to unpack. A few minutes later and Draco Malfoy had already claimed the best bed in his specific dorm room before addressing another issue. Something wrong with your bed, Potter? The green-eyed boy glanced up, noting who was addressing him. Not at all, why do you ask? I don't see you unpacking anything. Harry returned a smile. Oh, I didn't have time to go school shopping before classes started. Hopefully I can pick some things up in the next week or two. But with my lack of money to use I am not sure how that will. The room practically erupted into laughter, and the boy tilted his head in curiosity. Having money problems, Potter? I thought with all of that fame money you would be parading about already. The boy shrugged before a white owl came flying in through one of the charmed windows to land on his shoulder. Due to their underground location, magic was applied to various windows to allow for a viewing of the outside weather, along with having owls enter and exit for mail delivery. What do you expect from a half-blood Draco? He probably doesn't even know what a wand is. Again more laughter flooded the first and second year dorm at Knott's verbal jab. Harry merely smiled once more, as if enjoying a joke that only he understood. Severus Snape strode towards his potions classroom for the first day of class with the newest students, a sneer forming on his face as he began to think over of what he had seen thus far. Crabbe and Goyle were just as dim-witted as their fathers were. Draco was already acting like a typical pureblood, and none of the others had stood out. Well, except for one, Harry Bloody Potter. How in the world Potter had ended up in his house was beyond the potions master. Either fate was cruel beyond belief or someone had finally managed to figure out a way to charm the sorting hat. His money was on the Weasley twins. Regardless, he was stuck with the boy for now, unless he could convince Dumbledore to transfer him elsewhere. He pushed open the door as he made his way towards the front of the classroom. Out of the corner of his eye he noticed that the raven-haired boy was turning through the last few pages of his textbook, glancing at each page for a moment before continuing on. Perhaps he hadn't read in advance as all of the others had been told to do. This put the professor in a difficult spot. Severus had a general philosophy: never take points from Slytherin. It wasn't that he hated the other houses, it was for the simple task of isolating his own house more than they already were. Slytherin is the house of cunning, of manipulations, and, surprisingly enough, of unity. By forcing the other houses to develop that rivalry it helped the talented students from the House of Snakes adapt and grow far faster than they normally would have. 5. No reason to let them get lazy after all. The problem was that he wanted to take points from the boy. So very badly. Lily's son or not, he resembled James Potter far more than the angelic woman who was his mother. Potter. Sir. At least the boy knew respect, regardless of his father. It appears you did not read ahead as was suggested before school began. The boy just smiled back. I seem to have missed that information, sir. My apologies. A patented sneer formed on his face, and he ignored the whimpers of several Gryffindors. There is no excuse, so tell me, what is the last ingredient added to our first potion, the boil removal? There was no way the boy would remember such a fact, and although it would cost Slytherin some points. Powdered goat bones. The man halted. The boy was right, but he certainly didn't expect him to be correct. Maybe he had actually read ahead and just pretended not to. Interesting. Then perhaps you could inform the class how many times to stir a wolfsbane potion. It would be almost 4 months before they even studied this. There would be no reason he would know. 9, 5 clockwise and 4 counterclockwise. Now even the other students looked surprised. What followed would go down in Hogwarts legend as the professor tried nearly a dozen different questions from various chapters in the book, and Harry answering each question easily. By the end nearly all of the Slytherins had brought out parchment, along with Hermione Granger from Gryffindor, to take notes for future reference. The rest of the lions were simply staring in shock as the boy, who they all thought for sure would end up in their house, breezed through the test. 100 points to Slytherin. If Snape couldn't take points due to the boy's failure, then he would certainly not miss the opportunity to begin working towards the House Cup. 1. What, that isn't fair. You didn't even give us a chance. Ah yes, trust a Gryffindor, especially a Weasley, to make a scene and present an opportunity. Is that right, Mr. Weasley? Tell me then, what is the last ingredient in the boil removal potion? The boy faltered, and glanced around as if to get some sort of clue. Ignoring the desperate hand-raising, practically flailing, of the bushy-haired Gryffindor, Snape stalked towards his target. Come now, Mr. Weasley, surely you can at least copy Mr. Potter's answers. The boy's face turned almost as red as his hair. A surefire way of getting a reaction from the House of the Brave was to imply that they were inadequate to another house, especially his own. Well, I gave Mr. Potter half this time to answer. A response, if you will. I don't know, sir. 10 points from Gryffindor for poor preparations. I would not expect someone of your caliber to be as informed as a Slytherin, but I do expect reading up on what we will be working on for that day. With that, the man turned back to the front of the room, before a wave of his wand displayed a list of components for them to collect. 1. Comment. 5. Comment. Vote. Chapter 7. Welcome, class, welcome. Today you will have your first flying lesson. First you will practice calling your broom, simply extending your hand out and call up. The various students did as instructed, with varying success. Some managed to raise the object a foot, before it fell back down, others were able to call it after a few tries, and a select few failed completely. None noticed that Harry hadn't even bothered with the command. Now, those who have succeeded in calling the broom will mount and float a foot off the ground. Meanwhile I will be helping the rest of you. Before she got any further in her instructions, the professor watched in shock as Neville Longbottom's broom took off, with him trying desperately to hold onto it. Mr. Longbottom. Come back here this instant. No one was quite sure whether he heard the command over his own screams or not, but seconds later the boy plummeted into the ground, spraining his arm in the process. A wand wave later and the woman was busy escorting the boy towards the medical ward. I will be back shortly, if anyone so much as thinks about taking off, I will have you in the headmaster's office faster than you can say Quidditch. With that she departed, leaving the other students standing awkwardly in the field. A small gleam among the grass drew Harry's attention, as he walked over and picked up a small orb. I'll be taking that, Potter. Malfoy again. Harry forced back the urge to reach out and snap the annoying blonde's neck as he glanced over at him. I believe Neville dropped this. We have class with him later today, so I will be able to return it. Why bother? The boy is a class O screw up. I would much rather put it somewhere high up where he will have to look for it. You're such a brat, Malfoy. Weasley, the boy hissed back, focusing his attention on the redhead. Yeah, me. Are all you Slytherins so stuck up that you can't think of anyone else for a second? Perhaps if you were a bit more intelligent, then you would actually prove to be a decent conversationalist, but I will leave that to your moodblood instead. Moodblood? Harry inquired with curiosity, earning a wince from the bushy-haired witch standing nearby. It is a term for muggle-born witches. She whispered out, having already been called it several times since arriving at the school. Not one of endearment then. No. The raven-haired boy hummed to himself in consideration before pocketing the orb. Apparently more things would need to change than he originally anticipated. When McGonagall shifted back into her human form, she was pleasantly surprised at the startled expression staring back at her, and one not so startled. Mr. Potter, you didn't seem all that surprised by my entrance. Oh, I apologize, Professor. I recently had time to look over my textbooks, and considering this is Transfiguration class, and I haven't seen any stray animals or pets at Hogwarts, save for the occasional toad and owl, I assumed that you had the ability to shapeshift. 2. The woman's eyes widened a bit, before her mouth turned up in a smile. 10 points to Slytherin for brilliant reasoning. Now then, as Mr. Potter here hinted at, we will be studying the art of changing objects into different forms with our magic. Welcome to Charms class, everyone. My name is Professor Flitwick. I hope that most of you have had time to at least glance over your books. If not, please do so before our next meeting. Now then, can anyone tell me what the most important item for my class will be? As usual, Hermione Granger's hand shot up almost instantly, earning scowls from many of the other students. Yes, Miss Granger, sir. The answer is our textbooks. A good guess, but I am afraid incorrect. Anyone else? Girl, looks like someone just kicked her puppy, Harry noted with amusement as several other hands now raised. A quill and paper. That would be 2 objects, both incorrect as well, the professor answered the next student. A wand. Another good guess, but no. At this point the young Potter was becoming annoyed. He wanted to have at least 1 class where he could learn something more than just what the introductory paragraph of the textbook said. A moment later he raised his hand. Yes, Mr. Potter. Our minds. 1. The diminutive man grinned. Correct. 10 points to Slytherin. Everything else can be compensated for with time, but the mind cannot. It is the most important tool that any of us will ever wield, and the primary subject that all of your classes will focus on for your time at Hogwarts. Now then, who can tell me what a charm is? WWW, welcome to the Defense against the Dark Arts C class. Harry just stared. Who in their right mind would hire someone like this to teach a defense class? Ignoring the obviously dark aura that emanated from the man, another oddity that the boy who lived was surprised no one had noticed, the turban-clad professor was a bumbling mess. Maybe it was just an act, like the one that McGonagall had tried. If it was, then it truly was impressive. The man should have been an actor rather than a teacher. Yet as the class continued on, and he showed no signs of improving, Harry's theory began to fall apart. 20 minutes later a loud bang, caused when one of the Gryffindors had dropped their book onto the floor, revealed the man's true colors, as he promptly bolted out of the room. 1. Utterly useless. Comment. 6. Comment. Vote. Chapter 8. I warned you this would happen. The soft voice noted as Hedwig's fingers gently wove through her boy's hair. Currently his head lay laying in her lap on his bed. It was a soothing tradition that had calmed him down many times during his years at the orphanage, and stopped him from causing too many disappearances. With the other Slytherins taking part of a study group, which Harry had not been invited to due to his blood status, this had been the first opportunity they had to start again. I know, the boy sighed, his eyes closed and relaxed. I just figured that there would be someone who I could relate to here. Someone who would understand me, who would be like me. There is no one like you. It is both a gift and a curse. 13. A slight nod confirmed he was listening, and agreed. You will always have me though, she whispered, thus earning a slight smile. And you, me, my dear. 1. Once again her heart fluttered. True, the boy was only 11, but with his intellect and childhood he was far more mature than that. If she had to guess, his mental age was probably closer to 30 than 10. 2. So why do we stay? Why not just leave now? We could run away from this place, from the orphanage. You have a reason to access your vault now. There is more than enough money for us to live on for the rest of our lives. It could just be us against the world, like it always has been. The child's eyes opened, and peered up at her. It always will be us against the world, my dear, but you want more. 1. A nod confirmed her suspicions. Albus Dumbledore smiled warmly as his staff entered the office. This truly was one of his favorite events of the year, when the various teachers would get together and discuss any unusually talented students that they had observed. Usually this would only apply to the first years, but occasionally a late bloomer would be found and surprise everyone years after beginning their magical education. Slowly the professors filtered in and took their various seats. Refreshments, and lemon drops, were offered until everyone was appeased. Then the older man began. Quite a class we have this year. Several nods confirmed his suspicion. With so many pure-blood heirs it would bound to be a very interesting school year. We will start with you this time, Phileas. Are there any Ravenclaws who stand out to you? The shortest professor gave a short summary, with no one being mentioned in particular before the attention was centered on the Hufflepuff head of house, who reported much the same. How about your lions, Minerva? I do have one thus far. Miss Hermione Granger seems to be exceptionally intelligent and absolutely loves to learn. The man's eyes twinkled happily. He loved that quality in a student above all else. I see. Has anyone else noticed this as well? The others, even Snape reluctantly, nodded in agreement. Ah, well then we will have to keep a close eye on Miss Granger to ensure that her love of learning is properly nurtured. What about you and your Severus? 1. Draco Malfoy has reported high grades in all of his classes, especially potions. To be expected of Mr. Malfoy. Perhaps he will take after his father and end up being a head boy as well in the future. The eldest man complimented. What about Mr. Potter? The potions master bit back a retort. Of course. It would come back to Potter. Unfortunately he had nothing ill to say about the boy, yet. He is, above what I would have expected. McGonagall's eye roll was practically audible. Oh please, Severus, if he is half as talented in potions as he was in my own class, then I doubt even you could find anything to critique the boy on. 1. He is gifted, Minerva. An excited nod greeted him. Takes after his father, I imagine. James Potter always was quite the prodigy in transfiguration. And you, Phileas? Does he take after his mother in charms as well? The shorter man hesitated, before shaking his head. No, if I had to guess, has quite thoroughly surpassed her level of growth in that field. Now quite a few staff members were staring. Lily Evans had been a natural in that class from the day she stepped into it. For her son to surpass her. Hagrid, what did you see in the boy during your first meeting with him? The half-giant gulped, before breaking out in a slight sweat. Well, the thing is, headmaster. I asked Hagrid to pick up some supplies for me. They were quite cumbersome and I knew he would be able to accomplish this far better than I. In return I agreed to greet the boy so that Hagrid would not be pressed for time. The headmaster's eyes twinkled merrily, while the larger man gave a slight nod in thanks. Ah, very good. I am glad to see my staff work so well together. Well then, Aurora, what was your first impression of young Harry? He was. The professor hated lying to the older man, but, well, she couldn't exactly confess that she had been turned on by an 11-year-old child and still keep her job. Plus it would be years before she would ever have a class with him, right? Mature, and very intelligent. I am actually very surprised he did not end up in Ravenclaw with how interested he was in learning. 11. Yes, very odd. Severus, have you noticed any manipulations or shows of cunning by the boy? Nearby the Sorting Hat perked up. This was it. The choice made was being noticed. Now all they had to do was look further into it. All Slytherin had the capability of subtleties. Now if someone could just see it. I'm afraid not, headmaster. Perhaps he is just ambitious. How much have you actually spoken to him? McGonagall inquired, earning a scowl from the potions master. I do not have time to learn the hopes and dreams of every student. Keep a house in line. And prepare for the classes themselves. Dumbledore intervened before the conversation escalated any further, and judging by the returned glare from his deputy headmistress it was about to be. Of course, Severus, of course we were not expecting you to show young Harry any more attention than any other student. I was simply curious is all. Inwardly, the Had let out a sigh. Maybe it would take longer than it hoped. As long as the outcome was the same though it wouldn't matter, as long as the boy was stopped before he could grow any more powerful. 2. Comment. 4. Comment. Vote. Chapter 9. Neville. The blond boy jerked up, before his eyes widened at Harry's presence. Red-eyed with dark circles, obviously he was not sleeping much, perhaps he had been too upset for that. Hello MMR Potter. Now Neville, none of that. I would like to think we can be closer than a last name basis. Oh, of course. The raven-haired boy nodded, before reaching into his cloak and pulling out a small orb. Before I forget, I believe you dropped this during our flying class. I was hoping to return it sooner, but it is harder than I thought to speak with a Gryffindor alone. The boy's face had lit up, as he quickly took the offered object. Thank you so much. It was my father's. Ah, an important heirloom then. No, just something he wanted me to have. The whisper was barely audible, yet Harry was well aware of the meaning. I see, so tell me Neville, how have your classes been thus far? If possible the Gryffindor shrunk further into his cloak. I am not doing well. I understand Professor Snape can be a bit rough, but surely your other classes aren't that bad. The shaking of his head brought a frown upon the emerald-eyed boy's face, yet internally his grin grew ever wider. 2. I can't do anything right, it doesn't matter. Of course it does if it is upsetting you. Tell me all about it, Neville. No judgments, no ridicule, just two friends talking. I am so sick of them. It has barely been a month and all I hear about is how much of a failure I am. Neville can't do anything right. Neville is just a stupid squib. Neville is a failure. Maybe Neville can just fall into a coma like his parents. Can you believe that? Those stupid gits. Slytherins. The boy nodded, but quickly turned bright red as he realized who he was talking to. It isn't just them though. The Gryffindors pick on me a lot too. I wish I was just good at something. I mean like you. I heard you were good at everything. Harry gave a slight shrug, as if such things weren't important to him, and if he was honest they really weren't. The classes were painfully easy, and painfully useless. I am sure that you will find your path with time. I don't know. The Longbottom Heir's voice had quieted once more. I'm just so bad at magic, maybe I am a failure. Only for now. At first Neville looked on the verge of tears, to have his suspicions confirmed, before he realized something and perked back up. For now. Yes, Neville, for now. I see greatness in you, Neville Longbottom, a greatness that outshines every other student I have encountered thus far. You will do amazing things, once you accept this aspect of yourself. You simply lack the confidence and proper tools. Build upon yourself this year, Neville, grow in confidence and knowledge, and during the summer I will correct a inadequacy that I see in you. Then come next year you shall show everyone what you are capable of. The blonde stared in awe at the boy, or man, before him as he slowly nodded. Harry returned the nod, before standing to leave. Oh, and should things become too bad for you in Gryffindor, let me know in a few months and you shall have a place in Slytherin as well. With that he departed, leaving a confused, but oddly reflective, Neville Longbottom behind. 1. Hermione Granger sat on her bed, curtains drawn as she went over her homework once more, yet as she tried to do so her mind betrayed the focus she so desperately sought and journeyed to another. 6. Harry Potter. The bushy-haired girl knew who he was, of course, and the story behind him. She had believed that it was just silly myth and legend. Sure, he might have survived, through some bizarre magic, the attempt on his life, but all of the other tales? Ridiculous at best, outright lies at worst. Then she had begun taking notice of him, the only other student who seemed to know as much, if not more, than she did. He always had the right answer when he bothered to raise his hand, which wasn't all that frequent. The few tests they had taken seemed to give him no hardships at all, and the potion incident had already started its own legend. Even she hadn't known the answers to some of those questions. But worst of all was his abilities. Sure, she could memorize tests, and was decent at learning the few spells and potions they had attempted, but him? Harry had succeeded at every trial, and made it look effortless. The boy was a natural, a prodigy that even the professors had begun to notice with an interest far outweighing that which had been given towards her own accomplishments. It wasn't fair, she never saw him studying, or in the library, or taking any of the classes seriously. He shouldn't be allowed to succeed so easily where everyone else had to put in effort. 5. Hey Higgs, what do you see over there? The current Slytherin seeker followed the gesture, and glared ominously. That half-blood. Filth. Potter. Yeah, I hate that he is in our house. I mean, he isn't even a true Slytherin, just some brat who is good at studying. The older boy nodded. His friend Adrian Percy was right, and someone needed to put the house back in order. Who better than himself? Sauntering over, the Slytherin glared down at the raven-haired boy, who was reading through an advanced book on potions. What you got there, Potter? Without even a glance up, the boy replied, just reading up on some potions information in advance. Never know when Professor Snape might spring a pop quiz. The book was slapped out of his hand a moment later by the older boy, who promptly grabbed the younger by his collar and brought him up to eye level. I don't like you, Potter. No one likes you. I am sick of seeing your face in the common room for the noble House of Slytherin. You are a freak, a useless half-blood freak who doesn't deserve to even be at Hogwarts, much less here. You are going to regret being here, Potter. I am going to make sure of it. Throughout his speech Harry merely stared back. He did not struggle, nor glare. There was no threats of his own or provocations. He just stared back, almost as if it wasn't worth his time to reply. 3. After his speech the large boy dropped the Potter heir to the ground, before striding off and relishing in the whispers about how someone had finally put Potter in his place. None noticed the deathly glare that had appeared on said boy's face. 2. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 6. Comment. Vote. Chapter 10. Terrence Higgs concealed a dark smirk as he watched the young bookworm run crying down the hallway. It was a sign from Merlin himself to teach the young good blood a lesson, and get some enjoyment for himself at the same time. It is almost too easy, the boy pondered, as he slipped from the crowd and stealthily followed after her moments later. The Moodbloods always isolate themselves in the first few years, and who is going to believe them when they try and claim rape? 3. It had become somewhat of a tradition for the Slytherin boy, just as it had been for his father. Choose one of the worthless first or second years, wait for them to be alone, and then show them their place in the world. On their knees, or their backs. The best part? Most of the time they wouldn't even say anything. All it took was a bit of intimidation and bullying, and they would silently endure the rest of their years looking over their shoulders. Even better when they would withdraw from the school instead. Thus the older boy made his choice and followed the young girl at unawares, but neither noticed that their departure hadn't gone unnoticed, that a single pair of emerald eyes followed them as they retreated down the passageway. A troll. A troll in the dungeon. One fainted professor later, and Dumbledore had immediately called for all students to return to their assigned common rooms while the teachers went with him after the creature. No one thought to mention, for some odd reason, that the Slytherin dorms were in the dungeons themselves. Nor did anyone notice the dark smile that had momentarily crossed a young boy's face. 2. A little mood-blood, a teenage boy sang out, in a dark and awful tone, where are you? His strides became almost whimsical as he journeyed down towards where his spell pointed him. True, it was more fun to try and hunt for her, but, well, they didn't have that much time, unfortunately. As he neared the corridor which led to the bathroom, his heart rate began to increase, his palms sweating as his pupils dilated. The chase was almost as fun as the screams that would eventually reward him. Soon there will be a look of confusion on her face, then worry, finally fear and horror. Those were his favorite moments, when you could see the thought processes go through the girl's face. It was like the finest of wines. Suddenly a sound behind the older boy alerted him to something else. In the corridor, and spinning around, he was faced with an odd reversal of situations. First confusion, then worry, finally fear and horror. A troll stalked forward, as the boy slowly moved backwards, his mind trying to come up with a solution. Troll vision was supposed to be based on movement, right? So if he just took slow steps, then maybe. The beast's eyes changed, glowing a bright green as a terrible smirk appeared on its face. 2. The boy screamed out, before he was silenced with a sickening crash. Minerva McGonagall could have gone 1,000 years without seeing the sight before her. The teachers had stumbled upon the troll only moments beforehand, and a flurry of spell work dropped the creature before it could even react. Then she spotted the bloody mess on the ground. It was the remains of something, lying in a pool of blood. Something, with the remains of a tattered cloak mixed in with organs, bones, and muscles. The Transfiguration Mistress turned, and emptied her stomach onto the floor. Glancing over, she noticed that many of the others looked ill as well, and Dumbledore looked every bit as old as he was. It's a student. Phileas whispered out in horror. Severus. The potion expert covered his nose and mouth using one arm of his cloak, before slowly advancing forward, looking for any signs that might identify the child. There seemed to be none. Any house colors would have been mangled with the remains of the body, and covered in the fluids. The awful stench was a thing he never hoped to encounter again, as he retreated back to the other adults. Hard to say, Headmaster. I suggest that we take a roll call to see. He couldn't say it, despite his own experiences and life up to this point even. He didn't want to acknowledge what had happened so early on. To see who was missing. Dumbledore finished, wiping a few tears from his old eyes. Return to your common rooms, be discreet about it but find out, we need to inform the parents. How could such a thing happen, Albus? I do not know, Minerva. I simply do not know. An hour later and only 2 students were missing, a first-year Gryffindor and a 5th-year Slytherin. When Hermione was found she was given detentions for a week and docked 100 points. Seconds later she had been pulled into a fierce hug by her head of house, who was silently crying tears of relief onto the girl. Snape didn't have such luck, and had to inform the headmaster. I can't believe Higgs is dead. I know, right? Right, good guy, strong pure blood values. Harry chuckled at the nearby whispers, earning a dark glare from the Malfoy air. Something funny. Potter. A bit the boy shrugged, as he took another bite of his food. I find it interesting that no one even bothered to find out why he was down there to begin with. Only 2 students were absent during this time, but not one teacher finds that odd. You think he was a mudblood lover? Terence Higgs was a great Quidditch player and an exemplary Slytherin. She would have been honored to even gain his attention. Whatever you say, Malfoy. You know, Potter, it is people like you that give the rest of us wizards a bad name. You had the potential to be great, but then your father knocked up some stupid mudblood whore, and then we end up with someone like you. Worthless trash all around. Hell, I heard that they got themselves killed just so they didn't have to deal with the shame of raising you. Is it true, Potter? Are you some unwanted bastard? Harry merely stared back at the blonde boy, and if Draco was being honest, it was a tad creepy. There was no anger in his eyes, no fury or promise of retribution. He merely stared back, with an emotionless gaze. 3. What's wrong, Potter? Can't think of a good retort? Figures that a useless half-blood like yourself wouldn't be able to, isn't that right, Crabbe? With a laugh the Malfoyer turned to the boy seated on his left, only to freeze. Vincent Crabbe, along with the rest of the table on that side, was also staring at him. No conforming laughter, no snickers, no sneers, just stares. What's wrong with you? Fine, just because none of you could understand my joke doesn't mean. But glancing to his other side was just as futile. More emotionless stares. Glancing around the room, Draco Malfoy noticed something even more disturbing. It was silent. And all of those in attendance were staring at him. Even the teachers, including his godfather, held him in their gaze. Their faces blank and empty, expressions never wavering even as the Slytherin first year stood and stormed towards the doorway. 2. Fine. See if I care what any of you think. My father will hear of this, and when he does I will end up owning this wretched school. Pushing the doors to the great hall open, Draco stepped forward, and back into the room he had just emerged from. He blinked in confusion. What was going on? Was someone playing some sort of prank on him? Who dared to prank a Malfoy? His eyes briefly snapped over to the Gryffindor table, but none of them even cracked a smile. With a growl of annoyance the boy marched over to a different door, stepped through it and back into the main hall once more. Do you think this is funny? The boy screamed, not realizing that the various students had begun rising at this point. He did notice when they began to advance towards him, slowly walking with their empty eyes. Draco pulled his wand out, walking backwards to put distance between the group as he did so, not that he had anything in mind but simply the act of doing so gave him hope to stop the oncoming mass. Stay back. When he backed into the far wall he winced in shock, closing his eyes for just a moment. Upon opening them again the Malfoyer wished that he hadn't. No eyes stared back at him, because they were all missing. Instead those advancing bodies had black, empty holes in their skulls, from which black fluid seemed to pour. 1. They reached out for him, grabbed onto him, pulled him down, and then a scream from the Slytherin table earned Severus Snape's attention, as his godson fell back off of the bench he had been sitting on, his eyes wide with terror as he shouted incoherently. SSS, stay back. Stay away. Mr. Malfoy, what is the meaning of? But the boy quickly clambered to his feet and then bolted out of the room, earning confused gazes, and a few snickers from the Gryffindor table. Turning around the potion master silently observed the student sitting across from where Draco had been moments prior, the student he had been insulting up until mere seconds ago. Harry Potter merely shrugged, before returning to his meal. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, pa#Patreon.com/KittyLovesMilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 9. Comment. Vote. Chapter 11. I am telling you, Albus the boy is responsible. The aged headmaster let out a tired sigh. Thus far he had been through 2 different official inquiries concerning the death of a student. Luckily, he had managed to hide the presence of the Philosopher's Stone from the committees. It was always regrettable that when someone so young lost their life, but Voldemort's spirit had to be stopped. A resurrected Tom Riddle would claim far more in his return than the traps that had been set up inside the castle ever would. Still there was doubt about what he was doing. Perhaps he should have. Headmaster. Ah yes, he had forgotten that the potion master was currently stuck on a different obsession. Why do you think that Mr. Potter is the one who caused Mr. Malfoy's screaming fits of Severus? Because he is a Potter. 2. Another sigh escaped the man's lips. Severus, you really must let go of this hatred towards the boy's father. From what I have seen, young Harry is nothing like James Potter save for his appearance, and several of his scholarly talents. I am telling you, Dumbledore, the boy did something. Draco was ridiculing him moments prior and then. Yet you did nothing to stop Mr. Malfoy. Was he given a detention, or docked house points for his actions? 1. The pale man grumbled out an excuse while averting his eyes to the ground. Was there any noticeable damage, save for that to Mr. Malfoy's pride? This time the Slytherin merely shook his head. I have not forced you to engage Mr. Potter, despite the fact that he is under your care, but I do expect that you at least remain neutral towards him, Severus. You are a teacher first and foremost, and you are therefore required to put aside any petty childhood hatreds. Of course, Headmaster, but I hope you will allow me to continue my investigations. With a defeated nod, Dumbledore gave his approval, allowing the man to depart. Hopefully the rumors about Harry lacking any real friendships would soon be proven false. The orphan needed as much kindness as he could acquire. 1. Draco Malfoy paced back and forth in the first year dorm. Thankfully he was alone, having asked his godfather for a day off to bring himself together after the incident. Snape had been hesitant, but knew that the Slytherin could not be seen as weak more than one time or risk losing respect. The real reason was that he needed time Time to figure out exactly how Potter had done it. It wasn't any spell that he knew of, and his father had gone over quite a few mind-oriented spells with him over the last summer just in case. Reading someone's mind was possible, even minor manipulators could be done, but this, his senses had been taken over, his consciousness driven as if he had been in a nightmare. But such things were high-level magic, if they could be done at all. Not something that a student of less than 2 months could accomplish. He had to get answers. Needed answers, but most of all he needed to feel that again. It had lasted no more than a split second, but in that moment he had felt power. A darkness that had swirled around him like a dense lake of magic. Dark, twisting, terrible, tempting, seductive. All of these and more paled in comparison to that wonderful power. 3. But how had Potter done it? How could he wield such awe-inspiring magic? He was talented, Draco reluctantly admitted. Hell, everyone in Slytherin had taken notice that the boy effortlessly achieved the highest grades in any class he bothered with. He was intelligent, he was powerful, he was charismatic, he was fierce. Draco had to know more. 2. Neville Longbottom felt as though he was standing at the edge of a precipice. He had been given a chance, given hope for the first time since arriving at Hogwarts that he could amount to something, that he could be worthy. The problem was that the one who had offered such a thing was a Slytherin. Taking him up on an offer would mean that he owed the opposing house. If such knowledge came to light, the first year paused. What would really happen? Ridicule from the other Gryffindors? That was already a daily occurrence. Bullying. Hell, it was suspicious when it didn't happen at this point. It also wasn't as though the other boy was evil. He was Harry Bloody Potter after all, the one who had destroyed the Dark Lord, savior of the wizarding world, champion of the light. If he couldn't be trusted, then who could? 5. He might even make a friend. The thought of such a thing brought a rare smile to the Gryffindor's face. The idea of having someone to talk to, someone he could confide in, someone who would help me and whom in turn he could help send warmth through his body. How did you do it? Harry glanced up from the book he had been flipping through to see the blonde Slytherin standing before him. Do what, Malfoy? You know. What? How did you do it? Tell me. The emerald eyes narrowed in annoyance. I don't know what you are talking about, so go find someone else to bother. No. Excuse me. I said no, you. Will. Tell me or what? Harry inquired, almost curious what the other's response would be. 1. The wand was in the blonde's hand before he could think about it, perhaps as more of a reaction than anything else. The book was set down by the opposing by, and Harry slowly stood, forcing the Malfoyer back a few steps. But there was no fear in the raven-haired boy's eyes, nor anger, or even annoyance. It was more of apathy, as if Draco wasn't even worth harming. IILL. Yes. Draco made a decision, one that he would probably end up regretting in the long run, but he had to experience it again. I'll tell everyone about how much of a whore your mother wa. 4. A hand had wrapped around his throat as the blonde was thrown against a wall faster than he could even react, green eyes blazing up at his as the skinny raven-haired boy held up off the ground with one hand alone. I grow tired of this banter, Malfoy, and I grow tired of your comments about my family, so consider this your last warning. Black magic flowed around the 2 first years, darkening the light and suffocating the pure blood as the air grew heavy with power and rage. For a moment he could see his death in those blazing eyes. 1. Do you see now, Malfoy? Do you see how utterly insignificant you are? I could choke the life out of you right here, or snap your neck, or end you in one of 100 different ways, and do you know what would happen to me? Nothing. I could dispose of your remains so that Daddy would never know what happened to you. The only reminder to your family would be a few photos and memories. 1. Releasing his grip, Harry allowed the boy to fall onto the floor, coughing as his lungs struggled to make up for the air they had been denied. Turning, Harry gave one last glare before walking towards the exit. W8. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #Patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 7. Comment. Vote. Chapter 12. The Potter ear paused, his fist tightening for a moment as he mentally stopped himself from simply ending the annoying boy's life. Did you not learn your lesson? I did. Please, allow me to follow you. That had not been what he was expecting. Pardon. Allow me to serve you, my lord. Turning around fully, the boy who lived beheld what few ever had, a Malfoy on one knee, his head bowed in submission. Harry advanced towards the kneeling boy, his eyes flashing in curiosity. Do you know what it means to serve, Malfoy? To show submission to someone whom you have always deemed inferior. I was wrong, my lord. Of course you were, but are you willing to give everything up? Would you forsake your riches, your family, and you name to serve me? Would you live in poverty, do whatever is commanded and necessary without a hint of reward? The answer was given without hesitation. Yes, my lord. Then rise, Draco. The following day found a rarity in the Slytherin common rooms, that situation being a shocked silence. Everyone had been made aware of Draco Malfoy's utter hatred towards all things Harry Potter, save for the house points he continuously gave them, and thus watching as the 2 boys walked in together was a bit shocking to say the least. D. Draco, what are you doing? The blonde boy glanced over at Pansy Parkinson. What do you mean? What do I mean? What do I mean? Are you sure that you belong in Slytherin, Miss Parkinson? You seem to be acting more like an excitable Gryffindor than a sly, manipulative snake. 1. Up yours, Potter. Miss Parkinson, is there a problem here? The girl froze, slowly turning to face her head of house. P. Professor I. Mr. Malfoy is free to associate with whomever he wants. Why, yes, of course. Snape glanced over at his godson, before departing for the main hall. Seriously though, Draco, what is the deal? The blonde glanced up at the Slytherin who had approached. It is rather simple, Blaze. I reevaluated my priorities and have decided on a different course of action. But siding with Potter? Following a half-blood. You don't know what he is capable of, Blaze. He is far more than you realize. The dark-skinned boy paused, before glancing around to ensure they were away from prying ears, and took a seat by the blonde boy. Okay, so explain it to me. Are you sure you want to know? I am following him. Now, Blaze, if you plan on using this somehow, consider this my declaration of my allegiances. I am sure. Just because I am in Slytherin does not make me a manipulative, backstabbing bastard, Draco, you know that. With a nod, the Malfoy leaned in closer to his friend. He is powerful. Blaze, his magic is. I cannot describe it. It is dark and thick. When he exposed me to it, I felt as if I was drowning in it with no hope for rescue. 3. The Zambonai whispered a few choice swear words. You're sure about this, aren't you? I wouldn't have declared him to be my lord if I wasn't. Draco, do you realize what? Of course. I do. He asked me if I would give up everything and I said yes, and I will. But there is more to it, Blaze. There is something else going on. Have you ever noticed how effortlessly he does, well, Everything. It is like he isn't even trying to get perfect grades, and the way he observes us, some days I feel like he is a predator watching for his next meal, and others like he is a king looking for those with potential. 2. I don't know Draco the way you are talking, are you sure he didn't slip you anything? Tell you what, how about I set up a meeting? If you aren't convinced then no harm no foul, but at least you will have your answer. My lord, I have a small request. Oh. Barely my follower for a week and you are already making requests? I am starting to think this relationship of ours is favoring you far more than me. Apologies my lord, Relax Draco, what is it that you want? Blaise Zamboni, he has doubts about you. If I may be so bold as to make a suggestion I believe he too would follow you if he could see what I have. You wish him to join you. Indeed, he would be a loyal follower my lord. Whatever your plans for the future may be, I can only assume that the more soldiers you have to call upon the easier it will be. A decent point I suppose, just keep something in mind Draco, just as no two eyes are the same so are no two perspectives. What you see in me may not be the same as what Blaise will see. I can't believe this Tracy. What? I am telling you it is just a fad or something. It will all blow over soon enough. That is what we thought. Last month. And now. Daphne Greengrass glanced over to where the large majority of the first-year Slytherins were seated, in a large circle with Harry Potter as the obvious center of attention. It had started with Draco Malfoy, followed a few days later by Blaise Zamboni. 2 days after the dark-skinned boys changed, Crabbe and Goyle had been seen following the trio, and then Pansy Parkinson. 2. Of course none of these were huge shocks after the blonde. Crabbe and Goyle were followers, not leaders, and Parkinson was practically in love with the Malfoy heir, although her secret glances seemed to stray in the raven-haired boy's direction more and more with each passing day. 1. I am telling you they know something that we don't, and in Slytherin. Knowledge is power, yes Daphne I know. I do. Pay attention when you talk after all. We need to figure out what is going on, then we can decide how to best approach this. Tracy nodded, before going wide-eyed. Looks like we had better do so soon, otherwise we will be the only ones left. Glancing up Daphne noted that Millicent Bulstrode had quietly made her way over to have a whispered conversation with Pansy. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my P*Atreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, pa#Trion.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 7 comment. Vote. Chapter 13. Care to repeat that? You heard me Potter, I want to know how you got the others to start following you around like lost puppy dogs. The emerald-eyed boy tilted his head slightly at the larger girl standing before him, in the otherwise abandoned hallway, and if I refuse? What? The boy chuckled, ironic how the tables turn, I said, and if I refuse as in I am curious to know what exactly you are going to do if I deny your command. Not sure if you realize this Potter, but I am a great deal larger than you are. Indeed, and I am not sure if you have realized this but size doesn't matter much in the magical world. I know more curses than you precious. Light has taught you. Considering that I haven't been taught any spells, save for those that we learned during school, it is not that surprising. The larger girl gritted her teeth, before taking a step into the other student's personal space. Listen here you half-blood. She found herself pushed out of the nearby window, the only thing stopping her from falling being a hand wrapped around her collar. If you insist on calling me that again I will be conducting an experiment to see just how much of you remain solid after falling several hundred feet. Wait. Please. And why is that? I am growing tired of these childish games that children your age insist on playing. I give you opportunity after opportunity to simply leave me be. And yet, you continue to push. I assure you Miss Bulstrode, I might not be the first one to strike, but I will be the last. With a jerk of his arm he tossed the girl across the hallway and into the opposing wall, before making his way to the next class. Millie, what the hell were you thinking? I told you not to pester him. I didn't think. Of course you didn't. I told you that we follow him by choice. Do you really think we would just because he is cute? And no of course, wait, cute. You know what I mean. 1. Oh I do. Millie. The dark-skinned girl growled, hand unconsciously reaching for her wand. I'll make you a deal Pansy, you convince him to give me another chance, and I will forget about your comment. The Parkinson heiress gritted her teeth, before letting out a sigh and nodding, fine but if he turns you into paste it isn't my fault. My lord, are you sure that? Draco, if you ask me one more time about the fact that I am the only Slytherin staying at Hogwarts for the holidays I will think of a creative way to express myself. 2. Why yes my lord, of course. I will speak to my parents about future arrangements. Surely they will allow you to stay with us for the week next year. Oh yes, the child responsible for the murder of your father's previous master staying in the guest bedroom. The blonde Slytherin winced, before giving a nod and heading with the other students toward the carriages that would lead to the Hogwarts Express, and their waiting families. Harry, on the other hand, merely chuckled before heading back into the castle. An entire week without having people follow him around every moment of every day? It was a welcome change. Mr. Potter. Professor Snape. I am surprised to find you at school for the holidays. I was told not to return until the summer. It appears as though my place of residency wanted to save as much money as possible on food and heating. Severus Snape blinked at the deduction that the 11-year-old had just made, before giving a curt nod. Undoubtedly you have found that everyone else has left for the week. Of course, I am terribly sorry if this is an inconvenience to you though, having to stay at school due to one student remaining. I am here through the winter regardless Mr. Potter. If you need anything my quarters remain in the same location. Of course sir, have a pleasant evening. With a nod the potions master departed, trying to shake the feeling that his movements were being followed by some sort of monster, rather than it being a preteen. 1 day. It had taken all of one day for Harry Potter to complete his work for the rest of the year, read all of the books available in the Slytherin common room, and make a complete mental map of every corridor in Hogwarts. 6 days remaining. He had originally been rather excited about having some alone time. After revealing himself to the Slytherins he found that his time was constantly occupied by at least one of them, as in constantly. It was beginning to become difficult for him to even use the bloody toilet without someone anxiously awaiting him on the other side of the door. Then there had been the babysitting. At first it was amusing, almost funny how the other first years looked to him for approval. They would glance at him silently before making any comments towards the other houses, before cheating on a test or even doing homework. Then it became a bit ridiculous. The girls would ask him every day about their appearances and whether it pleased him. The boys were constantly inquiring about his opinion on everything. From Quidditch, which he couldn't care less about, to politics. All in all he found himself even more stressed with followers than he did without, but now that he was beginning to become used to the attention, having it suddenly removed made the time he could not spend with Hedwig almost eerily silent and dull. Of course he had missed one opportunity for excitement, one of the corridors, the one that Albus Dumbledore had Explicitly. Told them to stay away from was still unmapped. He also had another day before Christmas, which meant he had time to kill, so to speak. With a shrug, and a glance around to ensure that no one was watching him, the boy made his way to the forbidden corridor. One locked door in the entire hallway. Oh yes, this is going to be so very difficult. After sweeping aside the wards on the barrier, Harry found himself face to three faces as a massive dog stood before him, growling. Oh my, aren't you a big one? With a glare of his own, and the slightest release of his natural magic, the dog went prone before retreating with a whimper. 1. Now, let us see what is so very important to hide under a massive guard dog. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 7. Comment. Vote. Chapter 14. Harry Potter stared into a mirror, and saw himself staring back, but it wasn't quite himself. This mirror image had a knowing smirk on his face. 1. I am surprised it took us so long to get down here, it intoned. What can I say? I wanted a bit of excitement for my first Christmas Eve at school. This certainly is pushing our luck. Dumbledore might notice we are gone. I can only hope so. If the next 6.5 years are this boring, I might just leave and start a cult or something. At least that would be mildly interesting. Oh yes, because we aren't already doing that. The real Harry rolled his eyes, before reaching out expectantly. So, yeah, here you go. The mirror reached into his pocket and pulled out a red rock, which was now in the real world as well. Not like anyone else is using it right. Exactly, so why not add a bit of mystery to my life? You know, whoever those defenses were meant for is going to come after it eventually. The real Potter's face turned into a bloodthirsty grin. Oh, I can only hope so. Headmaster, we have a problem. Severus, my boy, please come in. Would you care for a lemon drop? Of course not. I wanted to make a few alterations on the wards surrounding the stone, but they were already breached. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled slightly, as he rose from his desk. Recently? If so, we should proceed immediately to capture you. I have already investigated. I figured there would not be enough time. The other traps have been passed as well. Albus, the Philosopher's Stone is gone. 1. The older man paled. Quirrell. Still in his office, muttering to himself as always. Were we wrong, Albus? Could it have been someone else? There have been no signs of entry up until today. Minerva checked just before the students left. Even if a 7th year could have attempted it, they would not have made such progress in so little time. It had to be a wizard of considerable experience. Perhaps it isn't Quirrell then? Maybe the Dark Lord has taken on a different form. He is the only one unaccounted for before the troll incident, and the only one I could not place on every evening that a unicorn was attacked. It has to be him. Should we strike now then? If he is bluffing, why would he do so? Nothing is stopping him from leaving if he truly has the stone. Let us wait and see what he does with the staff at a minimum. With the celebration this evening and tomorrow, this is the best chance for him to make his escape. In the meantime, I will monitor every other staff member and those few students who stayed behind. Upon returning to his dorm room Christmas Eve night, Harry felt himself feeling a bit claustrophobic. With the theft of the jewel, someone was going to come looking, which meant that someone would be going through his possessions. While he could care less about them damaging his books, schoolwork, or any such nonsense, he was rather protective of his companion, who had just awoken from her midday nap. It appears, Hedwig, that we need to find a different place to sleep. This one is simply not private enough for my needs. There aren't very many places that you can sleep without drawing notice, Harry, a soft voice echoed in his mind. True, but I have located one, and once there you will be able to take your other form as often as you wish without fear. Even without the mental connection, the emerald-eyed boy could feel his companion's excitement. The young Potter had to admit that it was rather odd finding a dozen or so presents in the common room all addressed to him. In his short life he had never actually received any wrapped gifts before, and the only thing he had ever been given for Christmas was having Hedwig give him a back rub before cuddling up next to him for the evening. 1. This still remained his favorite gift thus far, even with the looming boxes. A slight gesture later and the pile had been moved into his new room, while Hedwig was busy soaking in the massive bathtub that he found was connected to it. Everything okay? Quite, it appears as though my housemates have seen fit to try and bribe me with gifts. Harry would never tire of the musical laughter that the girl could produce. Let me know if there is anything I should be jealous over. I noticed the way those girls look at you. As I said before, Hedwig, you do not like anyone. And as I said before, I disagree, I like you, and I like you even more that you have found a room with a private, and very large, bath. I thought you would. Merry Christmas. Moments later the boy unwrapped the first box and found a rather expensive-looking trunk from Draco. Next a pair of leather boots from Blaze, followed by a wide assortment of candy and sweets from Greg and Vincent. The rest of the gifts from his classmates had been various articles of fine clothing up until he reached a small envelope from Pansy Parkinson. In it was a magical photo, one of her doing a rather poor job of what would be considered a striptease, with a note telling him to enjoy. 1. The boy shook his head, before sending the mental image to his companion, a broad smile appearing on his face as he heard the rather loud string of profanities aimed at the younger girl. A man named Hagrid had sent him a rather lovely photo album of his parents, while his head of house had left the library pass to the more advanced potions books, a subtle hint to earning Slytherin more house points, no doubt. 1. Interestingly enough, Professor Sinister had also sent him a gift, a rather nice silk shirt with a card emphasizing that if he ever wanted to talk she was available. This earned another round of curses from the pale-skinned girl when she heard. 5. The final package was a small box, one without a marked sender and containing a silvery cloak and a mysterious card claiming that it had been his father's and to use it well. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 8. Comment. Vote. Chapter 15. I still don't find it very funny. Oh. I thought you would be amused by Miss Parkinson's attempt at sexily taking off wizard robes without revealing anything too scandalous. Or perhaps my professor's less than subtle way of hinting at desire. Bitch is lucky she was wearing knickers in that photo, or I would be pecking out her eyes. And the other is still too old for you. The boy shook his head slightly. Hedwig's jealousy seemed to be getting progressively worse as time went on in the magical world. Yes, I know. No sex until I am married, and no murder unless in self-defense or extreme boredom. You really are taking the fun out of being child celebrity, you know. 1. The girl gave a hope before mentally muttering something about not necessarily waiting until marriage. Well, as soon as you offer. This comment, however, did earn him a smack to the arm from the blushing girl. Harry, go back to sleep. Where are you going? Hedwig asked in her half-asleep voice as the boy made his way from their super king-sized bed towards the hallway connecting their chamber to the Slytherin common room. Just on a short walk to get some air. I have been stuck in the school for too long. I will be back shortly. Oh, okay. With that she went back to cocooning herself into the luxurious blankets, earning a soft chuckle. It wasn't his fault that he was feeling a bit pent up. Dumbledore really needed to tell the gigantic man who sat next to him to keep his voice down while talking about unicorns being attacked at midnight, otherwise students would become interested and investigate. Luckily Harry was just bored enough to solve yet another problem for them. What a lovely night for a moonlit stroll. As he walked through the dark forest, Harry Potter became aware of movement in the clearing directly in front of him. Not wanting to miss any perceived excitement, he slowly made his way out of the tree and spotted what appeared to be a man devouring a unicorn. Such bad table manners. The figure spun, drawing a wand instantly as it faced the small child. Professor Quirrell. Drats, and here I thought that I would be surprised as to your identity. What a shame that it was so obvious. Potter, so is this when Albus Dumbledore charges out with the cavalry? Not unless he followed me very quietly, and considering what the man considers fashionable, I doubt he would be able to sneak up on a comatose man. This earned a slight chuckle from the teacher, who still cast his gaze around for any suspected ambush. After finding none, his silver-covered grin turned malicious. Quite the mistake you made here, boy. Confronting a dangerous monster like myself. I am sure that I'll be fine, although the forest is a rather dangerous place. You are a fool. I know all about you, Potter. I know that your defeat of the Dark Lord was a fluke. I know that you are just a slightly intelligent first year and nothing more. I know you lack any magical training that would make you a threat to me. You are out of your league. Interesting, you claim to know quite a bit about me, and yet I know a few facts concerning you as well. Oh. Enlighten me then, Potter. What could you possibly know about one such as myself? Well, considering you are drinking unicorn blood, it appears as though your body is falling apart, probably due to the whole host to an evil spiritual parasite thing. You are constantly muttering to yourself, which means you are probably in contact with it, and that it has some consciousness. The pitiful attempt at acting implies that you wish to put everyone at ease. The fact you were the only staff member not present at the Halloween feast would suggest that you are the one who let the troll into the castle, and you are attempting to achieve immortality through the use of an ancient artifact. 1. Quirrell stared at the boy slack-jawed. How the hell had he figured out that much about him in only a few months? Even Dumbledore did not seem to be that well informed. Then he realized something. The boy, he knows about the stone. Make him get it for you, a voice rasped from behind the professor. Oh, the Philosopher's Stone? I would love to, but it is such a far walk back to the castle and all. He has it? Make him give it to you. The normally stuttering man nodded with a sneer, before raising his wand and firing a bright red curse at the boy, who turned to the side and easily avoided it. Now that wasn't very nice. An instant later, and with the slightest of gestures from the boy, everything below the older man's knees exploded in a shower of gore. 1. Falling to the ground, it took several seconds for the realization of what had just occurred, along with the pain, to reach the man. When it did, his screams of agony echoed through the forest. Oh, come now, surely you have some sort of spell that can regrow those. You might want to do so quickly though, lest you bleed to death. Why, you monster? Monster? You are the one with the Dark Lord's face attached to the back of your skull, yet you call me a monster. Harry slowly advanced toward the professor, who began to crawl away in a pathetic attempt to escape. Stay back. Stay away from me. Oh, come now, our duel isn't quite done yet. Surely you have some other spells to use on me. Surely this is not all that you are capable of. D-Demon. Monster. A pity. Well, as fun as this has been, I find your teaching skills to be sub-par. Hopefully your replacement will be more effective. The screams that echoed through the night scared away even the most dangerous of predators. Harry. I told you I would return, my dear. 1. Did you have a nice walk? I did. It was very relaxing. 1. Good. Now if you don't mind, I could use some warmth and cuddling. Hedwig practically demanded, as the boy climbed back into the bed behind her. 2. I thought you would never ask. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my P*Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #Patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 7. Comment. Vote. Chapter 16. Albus. The headmaster looked over to the potion master, who gestured towards the empty seat at the staff table. Quirrell had not been seen that morning. Following their breakfast, the two journeyed to the man's quarters, only to find him missing. A flick of the elder wizard's wand summoned the other staff members. It appears as though one of our own has gone missing. Please search the school until he is found. Until then, all students will be confined to their dormitories for safety. Hagrid reported back several hours later that the body had been found. God in heaven, Albus. Minerva whispered, as she turned away from the horrific scene they had arrived at in the forest. It was Quirrell, at least. Part of him. From what Dumbledore could tell, the body had been literally torn to pieces by some sort of powerful wild animal. Organs, bones, muscles, skin, and blood covered the ground in a wide area, and it was only the fact that they had located part of the man's face that they could even identify the body. 1. Hagrid, my friend, you know more about what lives in these woods than any of us. What do you think could have done this? The man, who was crouching down by the remains, nodded slightly. Looks like an animal, headmaster. Strong and powerful. But and no animal in these woods that did this. Sure, some could, a Cromantula be strong enough, but the body and eaten. Whatever did this and do it for hunger. He was killed just for the sake of killing. No animal in the forest kill for anything but eating or defense. Also, he was struggling. He was alive when it started. It was not a full moon last night, meaning it could not have been a war either. Snape chimed in from nearby. That's not the oddest part though, headmaster. What is Hagrid? Only 3 pairs of tracks. The unicorn, Quirrell's, and another person. Small, child-sized. And no other animal tracks whatever did this. Dumbledore nodded. It was obvious the man had been possessed by Voldemort, but for something to kill him so violently. How long are you going to ignore the facts, headmaster? Another, this time unofficial, inquiry. Another week of questions, and now Dumbledore found himself looking up at an angry Severus Snape. Just like the last time that they had this conversation. I am not ignoring any facts, Severus, I promise you. You are ignoring the fact that Potter is obviously guilty. He stayed behind during the break. He is in Slytherin for a reason. He is manipulative. And he had the power to utterly dominate and tear a man possessed by the Dark Lord into pieces without so much as a scratch, and without any of us realizing it. Please, Severus, I understand you hated James Potter, but this is becoming ridiculous. The boy is not a killer. And the fact that he was here for the holidays when the murder took place. So were a dozen of other students. And teachers. And the Draco Malfoy incident. Perhaps he even had a hand with what happened concerning the troll. He was with the other Slytherin students at the time, Severus, unless you believe he shapeshifted into the beast to kill a member of his own house. 1. Minerva claimed he was a prodigy. This time Dumbledore did not even try to conceal the eye roll. Please, Severus, you cannot claim the boy to be talented when it suits you and then useless the rest of the time. I do so wish you would leave behind this personal vendetta that you have towards the boy. 2. And I wish that you would open your eyes to the fact that the might not be an innocent child. 1. Harry, we are back. Draco Malfoy happily exclaimed as he pushed open the doors to their dorm rooms, only to find it empty. Harry, the boy glanced around to ensure that only his fellow supporters were around. My lord. Crabbe and Goyle gave two very unuseful shrugs before they went back into the common room. Had Harry left? Had he decided that Hogwarts was not worth his time and simply departed for other purposes? Before the full impact could fall upon him, the blonde heard an odd sound, and let his jaw drop, along with the rest of Slytherin, as the boy who lived walked out of a doorway that had materialized below a picture of Salazar himself. Harry, what is that? A good question, Mr. Malfoy. I also would like to know why you have not been staying in your dorm room, Mr. Potter. Oh, that is because I found a different room to stay in. Since it is still in the Slytherin quarters, it is allowed according to the rules, just like the special rooms that the prefects are given. Wait. Why does Potter get a special room but I have to share with one of said prefects interrupted, earning him a silencing glare from the potion master. If you can gain access, go right ahead, but considering that there is a password. And what is the password, Mr. Potter? Snape inquired, forcing down the annoyance he felt at the boy receiving special treatment despite his best efforts. Turning the boy hissed at the wall, which promptly opened. Unless one of you are a Parselmouth. The entire Slytherin house stared, dumbstruck. No. Well then, since it is not being used, I might as well stop where you are in the brewing process so that I may grade your work. Severus Snape announced as he began to make his rounds. The Slytherin side was exceptional, as usual, up until Potter and Malfoy's, which was perfect. As usual. 10 points to Slytherin, he muttered, sure he wasn't convinced of the boy's innocence, but that didn't mean he wouldn't use the boy's outstanding skills to help his house along. Mr. Weasley, barely. Functional potion once again. 10 points from Gryffindor. What? Why? Because Mr. Weasley, you are supposed to do your own work and not rely on your partner to do it all for you. We both know that it is Miss Granger's efforts that keep you from failing this class. But the man had already moved on, giving Longbottom a barely passing grade as well for his work. In the meantime, Ron sent a nasty glare towards the bookworm, silently blaming her for his misfortune once again. The girl merely hung her head, her eyes downcast as she tried to stop any tears from appearing. 1. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #Patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 6. Comment. Vote. Chapter 17. Has there been any updates, Amelia? The woman shook her head. I am sorry, Albus, but so far there does not seem to be any indication as to who murdered your professor. How has the replacement search been? Difficult. No one is looking for a teaching job halfway through the school year. Luckily there are quite a few former students and private tutors who have agreed to help out. Otherwise I do not know what we would do. From what I heard, Quirrell was a pretty poor teacher to begin with, mix in the fact that the man was possessed. I know, Amelia, I know. I had a suspicion early on but nothing concrete. Next time, Headmaster, I want to be informed when you start having these suspicions. I am tired of Hogwarts being run as its own country. I agree, and I promise that should such a situation arise again I will contact you at the start. The woman's features softened before giving a nod and departing through the floor, leaving the elder man to his thoughts. Whoever had killed the man was obviously powerful enough to overwhelm him without any serious injury. All of the blood had been identified as Quirrell's, and there was no evidence of a duel save for a single spell cast by the professor. Who could have done such a thing? It resembled an animal attack, but if so, why was the remains merely thrown about? Why were there no tracks as Hagrid had pointed out? Even more distressing was the fact that the half-giant had followed the mysterious set of humanoid tracks back to Hogwarts, meaning that a student might have been involved in some way. Luckily the number of students actually at the school during the holidays was very small, meaning that their list of potential suspects was equally small. Still, they could not go around checking shoe sizes and impressions without a warrant, and there was no chance of them obtaining one for the students without revealing all of the facts. The murder would be easily pushed aside by the fact that Voldemort had managed to infiltrate Hogwarts, and no one would be permitted to interview the suspects. A child killer, such an idea sent sorrow through the old man's bones as he rose from his desk and strode to the window. Outside a Quidditch match was beginning, perhaps he needed to take a small break to clear his mind. Harry. Your Longbottom, to what do I owe the honor? Taking a deep breath, the boy seemed to gather what little courage he had. I want to take you up on your offer. I want to be greater, I want to change. Excellent, how have your studies been thus far? Be better, I am still barely passing P potions but... Oh, don't worry about that, Professor Snape is simple biased towards Slytherin. If you decide to spend more time with us then... I want to. I mean I would like to. I don't have any friends in Gryffindor and... Then consider yourself an honorary Slytherin. However, before we go any further there is a rule I would like you to be aware of. The boy paused, his eyes darkening, and Neville swore for a second that the lights flickered. I do not tolerate any of the blood purity nonsense that is thrown around. The word blood is not acceptable in my presence, nor by those who stand in my presence. Do you understand? Oh, of course. I don't use that word anyway. And like that the room brightened once more, and the tension that the overweight boy felt was gone. Excellent. Then walk with me, Neville Longbottom. Harry. Yes, Blaise. Any reason that Longbottom is with you? Yes. The other Slytherins paused, waiting for an explanation that was apparently not going to be given. And that is, I wasn't aware that I owed you an explanation for my actions, Blaise. Oh, of course, and not my lord. Lord. Harry rolled his eyes as the dark-skinned boy began stuttering out for a way to explain the title he had accidentally given the emerald-eyed boy in front of the Gryffindor. Yes, apparently they see fit to call me that. I am not quite sure why though. Because you are our Lord Harry. Neville blinked in confusion, before giving a shrug and taking the seat he had been offered. Hey Longbottom, you are good in herbology, right? Yeah, Malfoy, why? I'll trade you, I will get you a decent grade in potions and you help me raise my herbology grade 1 letter. Deal. Come on, move out of the way, let me see. Oh please, like. You need to check the top students. Shut it, you brat. Draco rolled his eyes as he managed to maneuver past the old bickering students and to the parchment that had just been added to the announcement wall. In the last week, once grades were in, the professors posted a list of the top 5 students, academically, in every year. Would he be on it? Sure, there were smarter students than him in their class, but maybe he had made 5th place. 5. Th. Ernie Macmillan. 4. Th. Daphne Greengrass. 3. R.D. Padma Patil. 2. N.T. Hermione Granger. 1. S.T. Harry Potter. The Malfoyer's eyes widened. Sure, he knew that his lord was smart, but he didn't realize that he was this smart. From the corner of his eye he noticed that a certain bushy-haired witch had also caught sight of the results, and had frozen in shock before turning to hide her tears. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 6 comment. Vote. Chapter 18. Mr. Potter. The boy looked up to see a rather downcast Gryffindor standing in front of the table he was working at. Yes, Miss Granger. I just wanted to say congratulations on being first and all. Oh, well, I appreciate it, thank you. I hear you were second, certainly nothing to scoff at considering our competition. The compliment seemed to brighten the girl's face a bit, before they overheard some snickering from a 6th-year Slytherin nearby. Told you the Moodblood would come seeking a compliment, she is so pathetic. The girl fled seconds later, earning more than a few laughs from the other members of the House of Cunning. Slowly. Deliberately. Harry rose from his seat before walking over to where the older boy sat. Something you want to say, Pot? Any further conversation was halted, by the younger boy's hand wrapped around the larger student's throat. I do not like the term Moodblood. My mother was a Muggle-born and I find your use of that word offensive, the boy calmly explained, while the older thrashed about trying to free himself and breathe once more. 1. I am going to make this as simple as possible, for you and everyone else in our house. If you use that word again I will cut off the oxygen to whatever brain cells you might have until your parents find it difficult to tell the difference between you and a rock. Do you understand? The choked reply was, apparently, not to the younger child's liking, who promptly tightened his grip, earning a whimper of pain. I said. Do you understand? This time the shaky nod was accepted, and the boy dropped to the ground. Good, consider this your first and only warning. Ronald Weasley was furious. Grades had just been posted and he had ended up in the bottom 5 of the class. Clearly Granger wasn't helping as much as he thought she would be. The redhead figured that by giving up some of his precious free time to hang around with her she would take the hint and do his homework for him, let him cheat off of her tests, and generally just get him by at school. In return she would actually have a social standing in Gryffindor, besides being an annoying know-it-all. Seemed as though he was wrong on both ideas. Not only had he continued nearly failing several of his classes, but Hermione had been getting picked on even more than previously. Perhaps it was time to let her know that their friendship wasn't working and that she should seek companionship elsewhere. At least when they weren't in a class he could copy off of her during. However, this train of thought raised another problem, Neville Longbottom. Sure, the boy was another failure at being a Gryffindor in every sense of the word. He was cowardly, weak, poor at magic, and lacked any family to fall back on. Still, though he was a pure blood, and had been sorted into their house, which mean he could have turned his luck around and joined the rest of the men. If only he had enjoyed other masculine topics, like Quidditch. Rather, the Longbottom heir was into feminine activities like gardening. What kind of self-respectful boy liked gardening? Of course both of these issues were dwarfed by the largest problem that Ronald Weasley was raging about. Harry Bloody Potter. He was supposed to have been a Gryffindor like the Weasleys and his own parents. He was supposed to have been Ron's best friend, sharing adventures, fame, glory, girls, and gold. They were supposed to have ruled Hogwarts together. 3. Instead he went and got himself sorted into the snake pit, and then had done the ultimate betrayal by befriending a Malfoy. Who in their right mind would want to be friends with one of those greasy-haired kids? 1. Ron continued to seethe, ignoring disappointed look from his head of house and brothers who were well aware of his academic situation. Ah, Harry my boy, thank you for meeting with us on such short notice. Of course sir, you asked to see me concerning the summer. Yes, I wish to apologize to you Harry. I have not been able to check up on your living conditions outside of Hogwarts and I deeply regret that. How have the Dursleys been treating you? The boy cocked his head to the side, and Severus Snape felt an odd feeling of unease settle in his stomach. Dursleys sir. Yes my boy, the Dursleys. Your guardians. Headmaster, I have no idea who the Dursleys are, but I assure you that they are not my guardians. Then where do you live my boy? Dumbledore's tone sounded almost desperate, as if he was trying to convince himself that everything was fine regardless of the new facts. All Saints Boys Orphanage. The room fell eerily silent as Dumbledore's expression paled. I see. I am very sorry to hear that Harry, you were supposed to be in a loving home, to be taken care of. Well I am taken care of I suppose. I have my own room and everything. Yes, of course. And you are treated well there. As well as anywhere I suppose. I don't have experience living anywhere besides that and Hogwarts though. I see, my most sincere apologies Harry. I will try and remove you from that place as soon as I am able, but you were placed with your Muggle relatives due to the confusion of the war. We did not know who to trust with your life, and little has changed since then. Until we are sure of a place where you can be happy I am afraid I must ask you to return to the orphanage. Quite all right headmaster, I was planning on doing so anyway. If that is all, I need to continue packing for the trip back. Of course Harry, I will be in touch I promise. After the Potter heir departed the old man sagged in his chair, looking as if he had aged another decade or two. An orphanage. Snape whispered in horror several minutes later, both knowing full well the connection that the boy now shared with the former student. 1. It does not mean he will follow that path Severus, others have been raised in such environments and turned out perfectly normal. Yes, but others were not Parselmouths. Others were not present when not only a student, but a professor were brutally killed. Others were not enough. 1. Snape fell silent instantly, shocked by the rage in the elder wizard's eyes. I have told you several times already that we are not going to start this persecution of the boy without any evidence save for coincidence and your own hatreds. I have not seen any signs of darkness in the boy and neither have you except that which you force yourself to see. Let this hatred go Severus, otherwise it will consume you. 3. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my P*Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 7 comment. Vote. Chapter 19. Welcome one and all to the closing ceremonies for another year at Hogwarts. Dumbledore proclaimed as the entire student body was assembled in the main hall. It has been a long year for all of us. There have been lessons learned, homework accomplished, friendships created and renewed, love found and lost, along with a good number of house points. The elder wizard paused, allowing for a soft chuckle to echo through the students before his mood switched to a more somber one. This year we have lost one of our own. A young life taken far before its time. We shall mourn him, and celebrate his accomplishments for years to come as we hold those dear to us closer than before. Let us never forget that everyone who lives shall die, but not everyone who dies shall live. Let us live every day to its fullest and never forget that our time in this world is far too short for holding back. With that the man raised his goblet for a toast, followed by the others in attendance. I would like you all to join me in the final tally of house points for this year, and the crowning of the house championship. A few seconds later and the banners throughout the great hall changed to those of silver and green with a large snake adorning them. Slytherin. The respectful clapping from the other 3 houses was easily overshadowed by the roar from the victors. My lord, I hinted to my parents about your living condition and they did not seem very enthusiastic about meeting you. Harry chuckled as the Malfoy heir sat down across from him, being joined by Pansy, Blaise, Millicent, and Theodore not moments later. Quite understandable Draco, I was not expecting a red carpet welcome or any such nonsense. Supposedly Dumbledore wishes for me to be removed from the orphanage as well, but... Oh, orphanage. The boy quirked his head. What the devil was Pansy upset about? Yes, it is where I live. Why didn't you tell us earlier, Harry? We could have. Could have. What? The boy snarled, his eyes lighting up in a rare show of anger. Do you believe that you are capable of solving this problem where I am not? Do you think that I would not be capable of living on my own should I so choose to do so? And no, my lord, of course not. It is just that you could stay with one of us. This time the laughter that echoed through the carriage sent shivers down the other students' spines. Oh yes, I am sure that your parents would be excited beyond belief to house the boy who lived, destroyer of Voldemort, in their homes. Honestly, how many of your parents have? No. Association with the former Dark Lord. 1. Those present looked around nervously, before shaking their heads. When he spoke again, Harry's tone was back to its usual joy-filled version. Exactly, but do not despair for me. It will be nice to have a few months to myself after this previous school year. Besides, I will see you all before you know it. If you feel you need company, my lord, we are only an hour away from you. Millicent emphasized, moving her hand as if to place it comfortingly on his leg, but stopping herself with merely keeping it on her own instead. They all knew what the expectations of Wizarding Society was. Upon declaring their loyalties, they belonged to him in every sense of the word. However, one did not touch their lord without being told they may do so. 1. The summer turned out to be excruciatingly boring. Sure, Harry had enjoyed the first week or so of peace and quiet, considering that everyone at the orphanage ignored or avoided him, but after a while it was just dull. Luckily, Hedwig had decided to revisit her decision on sleeping next to him, which meant extra warmth and comfort at nights and in the early mornings. The second saving grace had been the abundance of letters that his followers had taken upon themselves to write him. Most of them were not so subtle hints that he should spend the summer at their residence, while others were simply friendly communications. Draco, for instance, was practically begging him to meet and play Quidditch, a game that the boy who lived had observed several times but found no interest in save for the idea of playing. A few weeks prior to the next school year, Harry finally received the letter he had been waiting for. An invitation to join the heir of Longbottom in a trip to Diagon Alley for school shopping. It was finally time to begin cultivating the boy's greatness. Greetings, Heir Longbottom, how has your summer been? The blonde, who had slimmed down a bit since the school year, blushed at the introduction before giving a nod. I have been well, yourself? Lord Potter. Harry chuckled, bored out of my mind. However, this does bring up something I wish to speak with you about. And what is that? This whole Lord business. I have decided that everyone shall have one free declaration before I begin holding them to their words. It means you can call me Lord one time, before I begin recognizing your fealty. Oh. Do not worry, Neville, you are perfectly fine right now. I am certainly not going to take into account previous statements, although it would be fairly interesting to see the Slytherins react to that. I doubt much would change, Harry. Most purebloods know what it means to say such things. The raven-haired boy gave a thoughtful hum as the duo walked through the alley, ignoring the various stares they received. Blimey, mate, how do you put up with the attention? I mentally picture them all as blood-stained corpses. 1. Neville laughed at the joke, not noticing that his friend appeared completely serious. Okay, next question, what is it with you and the owl? Hedwig. She has been my closest companion for my entire life. I cannot imagine life without her. The snow-white creature seemed to straighten up a bit as she sat on his shoulder at the praise. After retrieving some money for their supplies from Gringotts, Harry led his friend to Ollivanders, much to the confusion of the other boy. 1. Harry, what are we doing? We are going to be buying you a new wand, Neville. The future Longbottom Lord should not be carrying around another person's tool. It needs to be yours, not your father's. This is the first step to you achieving your greatness, something we will be working on quite a bit in this upcoming year. Mr. Longbottom, and Mr. Potter. I must admit I expected to see both of you here last year. If my memory serves me right, you are both second years rather than first. The blonde glanced over to his friend, a bit confused since he had always seen Harry using a wand during class. That is correct, however, as you can see I already have what I need. We are merely here for my friend Neville. He has been using his father's old wand, and while it is very well made, it is not for him. The older man's eyes remained trained on the emerald green ones of the boy who lived, even as he nodded in agreement. Yes, you really should have your own. But I am sure that any wand you purchase will not be as useful as one that I can make for you, Mr. Potter. Again the boy waved off his argument. I have made it through my entire first year without effort using my current solution. I am sure it will suffice. Now for Heir Longbottom. A hesitant nod answered him, before the wand maker turned his attention towards the blonde. Yes, well then let us see what we can do. Right or left hand, Mr. Longbottom? Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 8 comment. Vote. Chapter 20. A popping sound gained the boy who lived attention as a house elf appeared in his room, earning a startled gasp from a young white-haired girl. For a moment Harry considered moving into a different apartment, perhaps one that went unregistered so he could avoid such rude intrusions. Master Harry Potter. And you are? Dobby is Dobby. Master Harry Potter must not return to Hogwarts this year. Terrible things are going to happen this year. Terrible things, you say? Well then I simply must attend. I would not want to miss the fun now, would I? No. Master Harry Potter must not go. And if I choose to do so anyway? Dobby will stop you, however Dobby must. The creature glanced over at the young girl for a brief moment, before finding himself magically thrown against the wall. 1. I will tell you only one time. Dobby. If you so much as contemplate doing something with Hedwig, I will end you. Shadows lengthened across the floor, the lights flickering ever so slightly as the boy's own eyes lit up with green flames. 1. Dobby is not afraid, sir. Dobby is used to death threats. Dobby wants Master Harry Potter to be safe. Dobby wants to protect the great Harry Potter, sir. But that is where you are mistaken. Death is not the worst outcome to your actions. I will be going to Hogwarts. If you are so insistent upon protecting me, then you may do so during the year. Perhaps if you prove your worth, I will consider a more permanent solution to your problems and desires. The house elf nodded reluctantly, before being released and popping away a moment later. My lord. What are you reading? Emerald eyes peered up from behind a muggle-written book. It is a book on psychology. I purchased a few during last summer for something to do during the train ride. Oh, but why bother wasting your time on muggle books? Because wizards do not have any books on psychology. Psychology. Study of the mind. It is rather interesting. I see. So what is the plan for this year now that Slytherin has nearly been united under you? Now we begin expanding into the other houses, Draco. The world is not dominated by only Slytherins. Ugh, please tell me we will be limiting our interactions with the Gryffindors though. You did not seem to have a problem with Neville at the end of last year. Well, I mean yet but. So I fail to see what is so wrong with the brave of us. I am far more interested to see who our new defense professor will end up being. A dreamy sigh echoed through the carriage, earning a quirk of Harry's eyebrow towards Pansy, while Malfoy sneered in response. Lockhart, the fraud. Oh please Draco, you are just jealous of the man. Jay jealous? The man is a complete moron. Because his hair looks better than yours. No. Because he is, arg. My lord, tell her. Tell her what, Draco? I do not even know who this Lockhart person is. 1. The girl gaped at him in shock. My lord, how do you not know who he is? Does it look as though I keep up on current events? Besides, that is what I have Draco for. The blonde boy's chest puffed out a bit at the praise. See Pansy, our lord knows who to place his trust in. Welcome students, to another year at Hogwarts. As the headmaster began his introductory speech, Harry's attention diverted to far more important tasks, mainly that of assessing the students of other houses. Neville was already on his side, and gaining more confidence by the day it seemed. He also had ideas on recruiting a few other loyal, if a bit easily manipulated, Gryffindors. Hufflepuffs weren't terribly exciting, but would also be the easiest to mass recruit once the rest of the school fell in line. Ravenclaw would likely be the most difficult. They tended to be far more socially isolated and unwilling to care about what the other three houses would value. Regardless, Harry was anything but worried. This was turning into more of a school project for himself rather than a task that he had to accomplish. Something to occupy his time with, considering he had already memorized every book the previous year and could cast the spells without effort. Hopefully whatever danger Dobby had warned him about would end up being interesting at least. Mr. Potter, after you are unpacked, could I speak with you in my office please? The password is razzleberries. The boy nodded, allowing the older man to return to the professor dining table, and earning curious glances from the rest of Slytherin House. Something you want to share with us, Potter? Odd, I wasn't aware that my comings and goings were any of your business, Flint. The boy winced, before muttering an apology, much to the surprise of the first-year students. Draco merely grinned. You will understand later tonight, do not worry about it for now. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my P*Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #Patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 7 comment. Vote. Chapter 21. Harry my boy, I trust you had a good summer. It was, productive sir, and yours. The older man's eyes twinkled happily, very good I must say. I am sure you noticed that we have a new defense teacher. I saw, hopefully he is a bit more confident than Professor Quirrell was. I found it quite difficult to understand the man through all of his stuttering. Completely understandable, a lapse of judgment on my part in regards to that choice. Would you care for a lemon drop? The boy nodded, and took one of the offered sweets, much to the man's delight. Oh, before I forget sir, I have a small gift for you. A gift? Harry my boy, you shouldn't have, it is the job of adults to provide for you, not the other way around. Perhaps, but I suspect this is not something you can normally obtain. With that the boy enlarged the bag he had been carrying, much to the elder wizard's surprise, and gently laid it on his desk, before gesturing for the man to open it. Inside was a wide assortment of various muggle candies and chocolates. Oh my, I do believe you are correct Harry my boy, it is most difficult for me to find the time to buy treats of such varieties. I do so hope you did not spend too much money on this. Hardly sir, with Halloween being the next holiday muggle stores tend to sell such things in bulk supply, that bag was cheaper than a nice meal would be in a wizard restaurant. Well then I suppose this means I owe you dinner at a nice restaurant at some point my boy. Perhaps over the winter holidays. Harry nodded, I will take you up on that offer sir. Now to another topic I wish to speak with you about. I have been attempting to find you a suitable family to live with, but with Death Eaters still in hiding or being exempt from prosecution I am afraid that if I try to get involved, the ministry will relocate me elsewhere. I completely understand headmaster. I wish I could do more for you my boy, I truly do. I know, and that is all that matters. If there is nothing else I would like to get some rest. It has been a long day. Of course Harry, of course. The boy rose to his feet, gave a slight bow before departing to the door where he paused for a moment. Headmaster, if you have any free time in the next few weeks I would not be opposed to another one of these chats. I have always found the company of older, and wiser, individuals to be rather thrilling. 4. The twinkle in Dumbledore's eyes reappeared at full force. Welcome class to your first day of actual defense class. My name is the great Gilderoy Lockhart and I will be the one conducting you through this magical journey. 2. The boys groaned. Most of the girls giggled. Harry rolled his eyes, trying not to cause the man's intestines to explode in the middle of class, but it was just so very tempting. Now then first we shall, oh my, dost my eyes deceive me? Harry Potter, I thought it was you. It has been ages since our last encounter. The boy who lived idly wondered if the man actually believed that they knew each other, or that if he smiled enough everyone else would just assume he was correct. I do not recall ever meeting before. Since if they had Harry was quite sure that the older man would be lying dead in a ditch somewhere. Oh of course we have. It was during our encounter with the vampire of Venice, do you not remember? The not so subtle wink made the urge to kill the man even greater. I do not believe. Well regardless, I am pleased that you have accepted my tutelage once more. We shall begin this class with a light homework assignment, and then a practical demonstration. I want you all to read The Vampire in Venice for your studies this week and write me an essay on how my technique has changed the fundamental ways that we hunt the creatures of the night. Draco nudged the emerald-eyed boy, before gesturing down at the paper that lay between them. On it was scribbled a short message. I will give you anything to murder this rat. Giving a light chuckle the Potter returned his attention to the man, who opened a large cage with a flourish. Defend yourselves. 1. Pixie surged into the room, earning screams and shouts from the students while Lockhart suddenly found himself overwhelmed and retreating back to his office, calling out something about not forgetting homework assignments. Papers were being thrown about, children picked up and tossed across the room, obscene gestures drawn on the blackboards. Yet through it all Harry remained unharassed and seated, idly wondering if he should bother stepping in or not. Fortunately for the pixies themselves, whom he was contemplating just burning alive, a certain bushy-haired witch cast a spell, slowing them down in the air and allowing the class to round them up. Can you believe her? The first week of class and the know-it-all is already acting like she is better than everyone else. I wish she would have just stayed home and left us in peace. It's not like she has any friends anyway. Ronald Wilsey complained as he made his way through the halls with some of his fellow Gryffindors. Meanwhile Hermione, who had overheard the conversation, had already ran into a nearby bathroom to hide her tears. Unbeknownst to the others, a student stood in the shadows watching the entire incident as a smile slowly formed on his face. 2. Harry Potter let out a deep, annoyed sigh. Why in the world did it have to be this bloody obvious? Again. First year it had been a professor with an obvious dark aura eclipsing his own, and focused around his soul. It had taken less than a day for Harry to figure out it was possession. This year it was slightly more interesting, but even more blatantly apparent. A young redhead, Ginny Weasley if he recalled correctly, was sitting by herself, muttering and glancing around every few moments in fear before writing a bit in some plainly evil book. Seriously, had no one ever heard of the concept of hidden nature? Why couldn't the dark forces at least try to make it a challenge for him to figure these things out? The question now was, should he intervene, or wait to see what happened? If he had waited a bit longer the previous year he might have been able to face off against an immortal Dark Lord, the thought of which lit his blood aflame and sent excited shivers down his spine. On the other hand he also would have lost out on a rare magical artifact that, despite not finding a use for it quite yet, would undoubtedly be worth something in the future. Perhaps the book had some sort of ulterior motive, maybe it was after another powerful artifact he would be able to claim. Or maybe it was just a way of attacking the Weasleys. Either way Harry found himself a bit interested in the situation. He would wait for now, and see how things played out. He could always rescue the girl at a later date and have her indebted to him. She was rather cute after all. 4. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 7. Comment. Vote. Chapter 22. Psst, Harry, what are you working on? The emerald-eyed boy glanced over at the blonde Slytherin whom he had been partnered up with for potions class. A project I started thinking about over the summer. I do not expect it to be done this year, but it gives me something to do in order to pass the time. Something other than receiving perfect marks on literally everything. Yes. Draco rolled his eyes, before returning to his own potion, which he noted was not quite the same shade of red as his lord's was. Severus Snape gave another discreet glance over at the Potter's workstation. The potion he had made was, again, perfect, and now he was working on something else. The idea of trying to make a fool out of the boy was immediately stamped out, though. He had tried such a tactic before, and more often than not it just proved to raise the boy's skills even higher in the eyes of his peers. No, what the potion master was far more interested in was what the boy had been so studiously writing for the past 20 minutes. How to get the paper, though. If he directly approached him, the child might make changes or even destroy the evidence by accident. What he needed was a distraction of some kind to make move. Thankfully some deity or another was listening, and a ruckus from the back of the room gained everyone's attention as Weasley's cauldron boiled over, earning several screams as students moved out of the way. What a surprise, Mr. Weasley, still unable to mix even the simplest of potions. What is even more surprising is that Ms. Granger was not observant enough as your partner to stop you, the man called out as he strode towards their shared table. On the way a simple wandless spell had copied whatever his target had been writing down onto a blank piece of parchment on the man's own desk. By the time he had reached the pier his secret mission was complete, and he was able to divert all of his attention to scolding the two students, earning snickers from Slytherin and embarrassment from the preteens themselves. The class ended shortly thereafter, with the students packing up their supplies and leaving in their normal disorderly fashion. One, however, paused at the doorway and glanced back at the man seated behind his desk at the front of the room. Professor. Mr. Potter. If you wanted to see my notes so badly all you had to do was ask, no need to be secretive about it, and like that he left, leaving a dumbfounded, and slightly frightened, spy behind. 4. My lord, did you hear the news? I don't know, what is the news? I made Seeker. You are looking at the new Slytherin House Seeker for Quidditch. Pansy gave a gleeful cheer, before hugging the blonde boy with a slight blush. Several others of their year also gave congratulatory nods or pats on the back as well. Harry himself merely smiled and gave a nod. Does this mean you will come, my lord? To our games, I mean. The previous year Harry had, usually, avoided the Quidditch fields. They held no interest for him and the game itself seemed rather simplified for what it could have entailed using magic. Still Draco had dragged him to 1 or 2 games, which Slytherin naturally won, and he had not protested. I suppose so, I can't exactly ignore my chief advisor now, can I? The blonde beamed in excitement at the acknowledgement of his role. So is there anything else we need to go over? Dumbledore intoned with his normal grandfatherly voice. He did so enjoy these weekly staff meetings, and if they weren't so busy he would have insisted on having them more often. It was far too difficult to keep up with all of the activities and students that Hogwarts held while keeping his other positions sustained at the same time. Actually, Headmaster, I do. Snape replied, earning a nod from the older man while the potion master pulled out a piece of parchment. It has come to my attention that a certain student has been working on a new project in his spare time. Something that reeks of advanced magic and darkness. After retrieving his notes it is obvious to me that this is something we need to put a stop to. Oh? And who is this student, Severus? Albus gently asked, silently praying that it wasn't who he suspected. Harry Potter. The groans were far from silent from the other staff members, even from Lockhart. It went unnoticed by none that the Slytherin head of house had an issue with the young boy, whom everyone else saw as a near-perfect student and role model. Severus, my boy, we have talked about. Just take it. Letting out another deep sigh the elder wizard did as was demanded of him, and glanced over the notes inscribed in the young boy's handwriting. I suppose I will have to agree with you, Severus. It looked as though the man had just won the lottery based upon the way his face lit up. It certainly is advanced theory. If I had not been exposed to examples of his work due to everything you have brought to me I would have thought this was done by a far older wizard such as yourself. What? No. Headmaster, please look closer at the... Phileas, would you please take a look? There is some rather advanced charms work that I could use your consultation on. The diminutive professor nodded, before taking the paper and looking it over himself. Interesting. Not interesting. Dark. Headmaster, surely you see the implications of this. I see an advanced piece of work, although the true goal has not been made clear by this. Perhaps Minerva growled out, sending a glare at the greasy-haired man, we could simply call the boy in to ask him rather than making blind guesses. Unless of course Severus doubts his ability to tell whether a 12-year-old is lying to him or not. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 6. Comment. Vote. Chapter 23. Harry, my boy, thank you for joining us. Of course, Headmaster, Headmistress, Professor Sprout, Professor Flitwick, Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape. The boy greeted each in kind with a slight boy, the other professors having left some time beforehand. 2. We do not want to take too much of your time, Mr. Potter, but there are some things we would like to clear up. The charms professor replied happily after finding the boy's respect more than a little refreshing. Of course, sir, anything I can do to help. It has come to our attention that you are working on a bit of a side project, one involving quite a few areas of magic at the same time. Turning to McGonagall, Harry gave a smile and a nod of confirmation. I hope that I did not offend anyone during class. I was trying to focus on it only during my free time, but I have become rather excited by it. Mr. Potter, your grades are the highest we have seen since even before. Albus went to school. There is no reason to apologize for taking on work that keeps you interested during class. I am only sorry to say that we are not challenging you enough. The boy gave a helpless shrug. I just find everything to be a bit easy. Plus reading the books before school started certainly helps. I am sure that it does, my boy. But back to this project of yours. Would you mind explaining it to us? Nodding to the eldest wizard, the boy took on a sly thinking pose. I bought a book about runes over the summer for some light reading. Here several of the professors gaped slightly. Runes were a fairly advanced subject that were difficult to simply read about and understand. Usually a student required verbal instruction, examples, and written text in combination to get the full picture. What I found inside was the idea that most important areas have wards placed over them. Usually these are done by runes to create the physical dimensions of the magic and to give it lasting effect. Considering this, I began to speculate that if charms could be incorporated with runes, then other fields of magic could as well. With this in mind, I have begun small experiments to see if potion effects could be expanded, and how they could be combined at the same time. Your studies mention ley lines. Why are you messing with those? Potter. Oh, I haven't even approached that yet. It was merely speculation that if these channels could be used like Muggle waterways, if so we could potentially use them to create larger area of runic or spell influence. Before anyone else could interrupt, Snape barged in once more, and to what purpose? Potter. Well, I suppose one could use large diagnostic charms or even healing potions in response to a catastrophe. Perhaps using them to prevent natural disasters as well, but I suppose I got into this project simply because no one else has tried to yet. Any retaliatory remark that the Slytherin head of house could make was cut off by the smallest man in the room. 100 points to Slytherin, for continuing the development of magic. Without new ideas and innovations we would not have the wonders of this day and age. Snape's jaw dropped. No one had ever given his snake so many points at once before. Mr. Potter, if you need any help or a room to practice in, do not hesitate to let me know, and Severus, if you do not want Mr. Potter in your house, I would be more than happy to adopt him into Ravenclaw from you. With a chuckle the half-goblin departed with Pomona Sprout, who gave a similar offer to the boy, thus leaving Snape, Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Harry in the room by themselves. Harry, my boy, I believe that is all we need from you tonight, the old man replied cheerfully, before pulling out a hall pass and handing it to the boy. If by chance you are stopped by a prefect or Mr. Fig, simply show them this. 6. I will, thank you, sir. Oh, and Harry, I would prefer you contact me before beginning any potentially dangerous experiments, especially involving ley lines. Of course, sir. Are we still on for lunch Sunday? Indeed, my boy, I am looking forward to it. 2. With that the student departed, and the scowl re-emerged on Minerva's face. Professor Snape, if you would please wait outside of the office for a moment. I need to talk to the headmaster about something. Severus nodded, already knowing he had been defeated, before leaving. 20 minutes had passed since Snape began his waiting period. It was an odd sensation, sitting outside of the headmaster's office on a bench meant for children. He felt almost like he was a student waiting for punishment than a professor. After another, what felt like decade, of waiting, the door flung open as a furious Minerva McGonagall stormed past him with a sharp glare. Come in, Severus. The old wizard sounded tired, and every year of his considerable age. After softly closing the door behind him, and taking the offered seat, Severus glanced up at the aged man before him. Minerva has made her opinion on your behavior towards young Harry very clear. Headmaster, I agreed with her, Severus. This blatant bias you have towards the boy is becoming worrisome. I understand that you had a conflict with his father. I understand that the man bullied you quite actively during your school years, and we both understand that we should have done more to prevent this from occurring, but the man has been dead for over a decade, Severus. It is time to let this irrational hatred that you have passed on die with him. It is not bias, Headmaster. The boy is up to something. 6. Yet you are the only one who sees it? Perhaps I am not as blind as the rest of you are. A sharp glare silenced the potion master, who now found his lap far more interesting than the man seated before him. You are creating evidence in your mind, Severus. You see a studious and intelligent young man who looks very similar to someone who tormented you, and thus you assume they are one and the same. Tell me, do you have any actual evidence of the boy's wrongdoing? No, but exactly. But the circumstantial evidence is irrelevant. Snape fell into silence once more, before a conversation came to the forefront of his mind. You are having meals with the boy. I am. He is quite intelligent and I find him pleasant to be around. Then perhaps we can make an agreement? I will admit that I have been negatively biased towards the boy, if you admit that perhaps your own guilt over what happened and his living conditions has caused some bias of your own. Albus fell silent, his eyes closed as he went over his own actions in his mind, before he gave a weary nod. Very well, then we should approach this as an outsider. There is circumstantial evidence that seems to be mounting against him, but if we were to approach the DMLE with this, nothing would come of it, so rather than shout accusations at every chance, let us observe for now. If we find anything that can be direct proof, we will build a case. Until then, I will ease my own prejudices. If I am unable to do so, then I will be the first to recommend he be transferred to a different house where he can be treated fairly. Thank you, Severus. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 8 comment. Vote. Chapter 24. Harry, how are you? Very good, Professor Sinistra, and yourself? Good, you may just call me Aurora though when we are not in class. We are friends, remember? The smile on the boy's face sent guiltily warm shivers down the woman's spine. Aurora then. Forcing away some rather unprofessional thoughts, the woman cleared her throat. And your class is Harry? The woman inquired as she and the student continued walking down the hallway. A bit dull, I am afraid. I have already read through all of the books and they seem to be much the same as last year. I was hoping for something different during this time. I see, unfortunately you cannot take the electives, such as astronomy, until 3rd year. Even then you will only have time for 1 or 2. I do hope you consider my class though. Her last statement had been implied a bit too huskily before she realized it. Part of her prayed that the boy would not pick up on it, but a small portion of her mind hoped that he might actually. 1. It was my first choice. I don't think I would be able to go another year without regularly seeing you. Maybe he did know what she was doing, but Aurora's knowledge of teenage flirting was more than a little limited. Perhaps we could see a bit more of each other this year? Although I am rather busy most evenings, I have always found myself to be a night owl, and if you find yourself without anything to do on a Saturday or Sunday evening, we could always start astronomy a bit early. The view from the tower is quite lovely after all. 1. That sounds nice, thank you, Aurora. I look forward to seeing the rest of you as well. With that the boy entered his next classroom, leaving a stunned woman standing in the hallway, before blushing and swiftly moving off to find a place to cool down, and perhaps take a cold shower. It seems like you have been getting even more attention this year, Harry. The boy turned around, glancing at the white-haired girl sitting at the end of his bed. Whatever do you mean, Hedwig? Don't lie to me, Harry. You can lie to anyone else, deceive them, manipulate them, just don't do it to me. The teasing smile fell and he rose to slowly walk towards her. You are referring to the sexual attention I am receiving from quite a few women. Yes. Have I not told you that you cannot be replaced? You have, but... Before she realized it, the raven-haired boy was standing inches away from her, his arms on her shoulders as he pushed her torso back onto the bed with little effort. Any protest was silenced as he moved forward so that his hips were between her legs, which still dangled from the side, his pelvis grazing her own and sending shivers through her body. Quite a position we find ourselves in, Hedwig. I said no teasing. No, you did not. But who said I am Teasing you, he leaned forward a bit, his hand on either side of her head as his face was close enough for her to feel his breath on her lips. What if I am not teasing you right now? He whispered softly, igniting a fire in her. What would you do? Would you kiss me back? Would you raise your hips and allow me to remove a few barriers between us? Would you give yourself to me? Harry, we. Tell me we can't. Tell me no and I will stop. You know I would never force you into anything. Harry, please. She whimpered pitifully, and gasped as his lips found the side of her neck. Please. What? Hedwig. Tell me what you want, what you need. I. Excuse me, my lord, but it appears Draco Malfoy is requesting your presence. It was the portrait of Salazar Slytherin that interrupted their moment. Since no one save for a Parselmouth could open the chamber, the room itself was designed so that it would alert anyone inside if someone wanted access. Of course, the boy replied, before pulling his torso away from the girl who was panting on his bed. It appears you will have more time than you thought to make your decision, but... His hands found her hips, and he rubbed himself up against her junction, earning a soft moan as the pale legs spread farther to encourage him. What a lovely feeling, hopefully we will be able to explore it a bit more later. With that he departed, allowing his companion to catch her breath, calm her emotions, and take stock of her undeniable feelings. 1. Harry Potter wandered through the hallways alone, and he found this far more desirable than spending his evening in the main hall. Last year he had made a mistake and was forced to deal with an evening-long celebration about the destruction of the Dark Lord, and thus his parents' murder. By the end of the evening he had been rather close to snapping the first person's neck that he ran into. Luckily for him, a troll had been snuck into the castle, thus allowing him to relieve his annoyances by turning a boy into a puddle of blood and various other fluids. This year there wasn't such an opportunity, and although it was a rather enticing idea to find someone to murder, it would also make his remaining years a tad more irritating than they would normally be. He could only hope that whatever danger he had been warned about made itself known soon, otherwise drastic measures would need to be taken in order to bring some excitement into his life. Upon turning the corner the boy froze, and a cruel smile emerged on his face. Before him lay a student, frozen in place. They appeared to be alive, but petrified. Finally, something interesting happened. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my P*Atreon right now and get access to 60+ premium chapters. Link, #Patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2+ advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 5 comment. Vote. Chapter 25. I Headmaster Dumbledore, to what do I owe the honor of a call? The older man sighed, before stuffing away any pride he had built up over the years. It was time for humility, for him to place the safety of others first and foremost. Director Bones, I wish to inform you of a situation that we have just discovered. Amelia's enjoying your suffering smile fell instantly as she stood from her desk. Am I clear to enter? You are. Seconds later the head of the DMLE stepped into Albus Dumbledore's office. I must admit I did not expect you to actually contact me involving Hogwarts business. I have been far too prideful in the past and that much is obvious. I want to resolve this situation before anything horrible happens. What has occurred? A 5th-year student was found petrified. Her eyes widened, before she brought out a parchment to use for note-taking. What do we know? They were discovered less than an hour ago and was reported by another student. Names of both. Penelope Clearwater was the victim, a muggle-born witch who was sorted into Ravenclaw. The one who found her was Harry Potter. The Harry Potter. The very same. She was discovered in a hallway near the library. According to her friends, she had skipped the Halloween festival to get an early jump on homework. And Mr. Potter's reasoning for not being at the festivities. I have not interviewed him yet. I wanted you to be present. The Bones matron's monocle almost fell off her face in shock. Apparently Dumbledore really was serious about his interest in receiving help. He is nearby, waiting outside of my office as we speak. Bring him in, please. I would hate to keep him up any later than we have to. Mr. Potter. Madam Bones, Headmaster. Both adults blinked in surprise at the boy's knowledge of her identity. I was unaware you two had met Harry. Oh, we have not, but I began studying the magical government over summer after finishing my work. I have quite a lot to catch up on after all. Indeed, my boy, Director Bones would like to ask you a few questions. If you find it acceptable, I will represent your best interests as you are a minor and cannot be questioned without a guardian. If you wish for someone else, we can hold off. No need, Headmaster, I trust you. The old man smiled, before gesturing for Amelia to begin. Mr. Potter, could you describe what happened when you found Miss Clearwater, please? I was heading towards the library to see if there were any books to catch my interest when I turned the corner and discovered a student lying on the ground. I immediately moved forward to check her vitals and discovered she was alive but unresponsive. I then sent out an emergency flare with my wand and waited for help to arrive. You did not try and find help directly. I did not want to leave her vulnerable. Why would you say that? Last year. Both adults nodded gravely, before the DMLE director continued her questioning. May I ask why you were not at the celebrations this evening? I find the idea of celebrating the murder of my parents with candy and laughter to be insulting. 3. Amelia winced at the cold tone, while Dumbledore hung his head in shame. He had never taken into consideration that Harry might not want to be present at the festivities, and thus had never sought to check on him. He should have. I understand. Did you see anything else at the scene? Perhaps a figure or anything out of place? Her body was posed unnaturally with her right hand extended and her left hand placed upon her face. It appears to be similar to what I have seen other girls do when they are applying makeup using a compact mirror. This would prove correct as there was a small object located nearby, but the mirror was completely shattered. Based upon what I have seen of their durability from one of my housemates, I would assume that the mirror was shattered before it fell along with her. Her eyes seemed to have been focused on the mirror itself. There was no expression of shock or fear, so I would guess she was not expecting whatever happened. 1. Both adults gaped at the student in shock. That is quite impressive, Mr. Potter. How did you manage to remember all of that? Eidetic memory. I can perfectly recall anything I have ever experienced. After a certain point. A certain point, my boy. Albus inquired. I cannot recall my mother being murdered in front of me, nor surviving the killing curse. My first memory is waking up at the orphanage. Oh, orphanage, the witch stuttered in shock. Yes, it is where I live. I am afraid I cannot go into more detail for safety reasons. I see. If anything new comes up, may I interview you at a later date, Mr. Potter? Of course, madam. Anything I can do to help. With that he was dismissed, leaving the woman to turn slowly to the elder wizard. After the situation is resolved, Albus, I would like to know why the hero of the wizarding world has been living in an orphanage for the past decade. I understand. Until then, what do you think we should do? I am praying that this is only a prank gone wrong, but in case it is not, I would like to request Aurora presence at Hogwarts. You realize if we have squads roaming the halls, it was cause of panic. I do, which is why I was hoping we could keep it at a minimum until we know more. Perhaps 1 or 2 of the younger recruits. If this does turn out to be a prank, then they could be explained as using this time for an apprenticeship or minor field experience. 1. Amelia nodded. There would be no way they could justify a dozen of Aurors, nor shutting the school down on such flimsy evidence. In the back of her mind she wondered that if it had been a pureblood who was attacked, if this conversation would even be happening, but dismissed the idea. I have just the person in mind, Headmaster. 1. Want to read more exciting chapters? Then join my Patreon right now and get access to 60 plus premium chapters. Link, #Patreon.com/kittylovesmilk, remove the hashtag. Free members get 2 plus advanced chapters for free. Join now. Comment. 8 comment. Vote.